Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the National Hunt Seminar. I'm so delighted to see so many of you here this evening to discuss very important issues for National Hunt breeders. It's wonderful to see that many people who are here. I think it's a testament to the quality of the panel. I'd like to thank everybody from the panel who've travelled some very great distances, France, England, Ireland, to be here this evening, and also all of you for coming from all corners of Ireland and even from England and France. So it's really great to see that kind of attendance. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to Lorna.
Thank you very much, Kathy. A huge turnout, guys, and not a big surprise because we have a very esteemed panel here by all accounts. And I know that later on you'll all be dying to ask questions. So for the first part, we're going to fire a few questions at these guys, plenty of questions, get them to discuss, and then you guys can ask some questions directly. Now, we really do have a top-class panel. They don't really need any introduction, but at the end there we have Richard Pugh. He is, of course, a director of Tattersalls Ireland and also a director of Irish Point-to-Point Services. Charles O'Neill, who is the CEO of Irish Thoroughbred Marketing. Anthony Bromley, who was Bloodstock of the Year agent in 2023. Of course, we know he sourced primarily a lot of his good horses from France, and that's obviously going to be a hot topic of discussion this evening. Bertie, we're going with Bertie, not Bertrand tonight, so Bertie Le Metayer, and Bertie's very much an agent for the flat and the jumps, and I'm sure lots of people have lots of questions for him tonight. So we have him, and then we have Peter Molony. Of course, we know Rathmore Stud, and he's also an agent for Goffs as well. And then we have Walter Connors, who said just introduce him as a consigner, but definitely a breeder and a consigner and a vet, so 3 roles for him. So we'll have lots of questions for them all. Important, I think, for everybody to remember throughout this whole seminar, the title of it, which is Jumping, literally and metaphorically, into the future and the challenges facing the national hunt breeding. So, of course, there are challenges. Of course, there are challenges all the time, but perhaps particularly more so now for various reasons than other times. And that affects everybody, the breeders, pinhookers, consigners, trainers, pre-trainers, the whole lot. So we need to try and, I suppose, cover all aspects from a horse's beginning all through its career, and hopefully we can do that. But I think importantly we're trying to find solutions for the problems we have or the challenges we have, and by discussing and getting these expert opinions, hopefully we can get some really good feedback and all find something to go forward with. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of lively debate as well, so it'll be my job to keep them all under control. We'll start, anyway, I'm going to start with you, Peter, and I think obviously there's huge discussion about the success of the French horses on the racetrack at the moment, and I think there's no doubt that they are, well, it's not no doubt, you can see the stats, that they are the higher achievers, and I think we have to ask the question, are the French breeding better athletes at the moment, and if so, why? So, Peter, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to say, there's been a lot of doom and gloom around, and I don't think it's all doom and gloom. I've just written down here a few nice winners since Christmas. Irish bred nice winners. Grange Clare West was a Grade 1 winner. Novice Chase Jatar, Grade 3 winner. Mr. Chewy, Master Chewy, Grade 2 winner. Hewick, obviously, the local horse here, Grade 1 winner. You'll say, oh, maybe Shishkin could have won, but he's an Irish bred. Found a 50, he was a Grade 1 winner. You'll go, oh, maybe Facel Vega was a favourite of that and didn't run, but he's another Irish bred. Lachlan, Grade 2 winner. Uncle Phil, Banbridge, Grade Dawning, Colonel Harry, Reading Tommy Wrong, read by this man here, another Grade 1 winner, Captain Teague, Spallan's Tower, and Mystical Power. These are all Irish breds that won Grade 1, Grade 2, Grade 3 top class races since Christmas, which is not that long ago. So it's not all doom and gloom, okay? That's the first thing. Everyone wants to go, doom and gloom. French are winning everything, the bloody French. But it's not all doom and gloom. We're still producing very good horses here. What do I think the French are doing better than us? Bertrand here is going to, we'll call him Bertie, he's going to tell us what he believes they're doing better than us. And I'm sure we'll pick up plenty of good ideas from him. To me, I think a lot of people say it's the upbringing. But to me, I'm not so sure. I think there's aspects of it, yes, but not everything. Walter Connors here, Peter Vaughan, the Bleheen brothers, Johnny Collins are all buying a lot of French-bred foals in France, buying them as foals and bringing them back here, and they're bringing them up in the Irish fashion. And, they're still producing top-class horses. Envoy Allen, this man here, an Ergumine, Jerry Colomb, Peter Vaughan, all these horses are being brought up in the Irish way. And they're still going out and achieving. So I'm not sure it's entirely the way we bring them up. One thing, we had dinner tonight, a bunch of us here, and we were discussing the one thing the French have in advance to us is the diversity of stallions. They have a wonderful diversity of stallions, a wide range of stallions, which, gives them great. And the other thing to me, and it's the number one thing, is the broodmare band. And I think, and the reason why their broodmare is so good is because they've had a wonderful mares program for years. And they've been breeding from sound mares that have raced and proven ability. I think in Ireland for too long we've had, a man or woman and he has his mare at home and she has a filly foal and he can't sell it. And he goes, sure, we'll breed from her. And there's too much of that going on. But I think we're on another note of optimism. I think we're on the right road here with the expanded mare program here. More and more mares are running, and only now those mares are coming into the broodmare band. We see some high-profile examples already. Cavega with Facile Vega, the Mystical Power out of Annie Power. These mares, it's starting to bear fruit, and I think we're going to see more and more of that. Where I do think we need to improve in our upbringing is we have our horses too fat. We have our stores too fat. You never see a fat store in France. You never see a fat foal, a fat yearling, a fat 2-year-old. They're not fat. They're lean. They're athletes, and they're the two. I think we're we're on the right road. Our mare band is improving all the time, but I think with the upbringing, I think sometimes our horses are too heavy.
That's great. A lot of positives and the aspects of going the right way. Bertie, I just want to go back. Peter obviously mentioned about the rearing of them, the bringing up of them. It brings us back to the kind of nature versus nurture argument, and really to get your views coming from the heart of France on that aspect.
I mean, first of all, when I was asked to come here tonight, he was Kathy, Grassick, and Peter, and they asked me my size, and I said medium. Why is that? It's just for a bulletproof jacket coming here tonight. So I'm resistant. But starting with, I think Peter's just nailed it. Even if I think it is clearly the upbringing. It's just the way we produce horses. I'm not going to say we, because I think we're in a global game, and it's not France against Ireland or England. It's just a global game, and I'll explain later where I think that whatever you're doing wrong here is costing us too. So, I think it's a global system. Clearly is the way you produce horses, because you cannot expect, and probably the story starts 25 years ago in the office of Ferry House. I see Timmy, I was with his father Michael. My first job in Tats Island as a young man, just arrived there, and we were putting up the catalogue for the Derby sale at the time. And I came back in the office with a bit of a French smile, and they all looked at me and said, well, what's wrong with you, Frenchie? And I said, they got it wrong. This is a 4-year-old, and he says, property of a gentleman driven in long reins. And I said, what's so funny about it? Well, I said, well, I thought he was wrong with the dates of birth. There was a mistake, because I didn't know, as a young man, actually you sold 4-year-olds. Back in the days, he was, correct me, Richard, but he was something like 70% 4-year-olds, and I was laughing because I thought it was a mistake. Not trying to be clever, just truly thinking it was a mistake, because as you know, our program starts at 3 and continues on at 4. So that's the first explanation to me, is where you come back to. He says, you don't learn to box when you're 25. Your face is going to be black and blue. This is a game. It's a sport of combat, national hunt. It's hard. It's testing for the distance, for the stamina, for the ground, and for the jumps. You cannot do this sport by starting late. That's the first, for me, the first start.
Anthony, just picking up a little bit on what Bertie said there and what you were saying earlier, that where it's not a competition, and the way things have gone, horses could have been bought as a foal in France, and then they go through the system in different directions. So just elaborate a little bit more on how the game has changed, really.
Well, I nearly, after Peter had spoken, I thought I might as well go, because I think he covered pretty much all my thoughts. I thought I'm a bit superfluous to proceedings, but I do think, when I did a Northern Irish TBA panel like this, probably 15, 18 years ago, and definitely needed a bulletproof vest at that stage. I was they were nice to me, but in the end, I didn't feel this was a great welcome, because I was very known for Quarto Star and Big Bucks and Masterminded, and I was definitely taking bread from the Irish breeders' table, and I wasn't a friend as such of the breeder. It has changed, and I definitely came with a lot more openly this time, in respect that the whole thing has altered. You're all embracing. It is as Bertie said, it's a global thing now. I mean, energumene was mentioned. Now, everyone's flying the flag for energumene. He was bred in France by Denham Red. Peter Vaughan hoiked him out of France, sold him as a store at Goffs, bought by Tom Lacey and Charlie Brooks, went back to England, wins an English point-to-point at Larkhill, bought by Harold Kirk and Willie Mullins, champion, trained in Ireland. Now, is he an Irish horse, a French horse? He's an English point-to-point graduate. He's obviously, you've got the sales company flagging up that they sold him as a store in Ireland. The whole point is it doesn't have to be an us and them. I think the whole thing is intermixing. You're seeing lots of French pedigrees turning up, bred to Irish stallions and stuff like that. I think you're embracing the global nature of it all. There isn't an us and them. I think the Irish point-to-point system, by racing the 4-year-olds so early, is getting close to that French angle of training a horse a bit younger and giving them hard graft as a young horse, which is obviously one of the beauties of the French system. You've got to remember, the French system have been racing 3- and 4-year-olds over jumps, over fences at Auteuil for over 150 years. They have been using that to breed. Their broodmare band, as Peter acknowledged, that is what's producing the main stuff. They are jumping fences at 3 in soft ground, but from mares which have done that, but they're jumpers, they're precocious jumpers. So you've been breeding that for generation after generation after generation. And I think the great Irish stock of the broodmare band weren't coming to their best for 7 or 8. And unfortunately, the way life is now, we can't wait for the really late maturing, slow old mares. So the best black type Irish mare families were they're too backward for what the market, or not the market, what the whole industry is requiring now. We haven't got the money. Training fees are so expensive, you can't keep a horse in training for 5 seasons waiting to come. You've got to, things have got to happen a bit quicker. It's just that's the way society is. Things have got to happen quicker these days. There are things to take from all the systems. The French system is not perfect because all the prize money is geared at 3 and 4. Nearly 50% of the prize money is geared for 3 and 4 year olds. So they're too hard at times on their young horses, and that can be a detriment to their system, as I see it. So, but you're pushing for the prize money because that's where it all is. As a 4-year-old, the 4-year-old year is amazing in France for prize money. So you have to keep pushing at those young horses, which isn't the right thing on certain horses. So it's not me saying French system's brilliant, the other one's not. There's a blend of both. But anyway, that'll be a start.
There's lots to come back to for sure. I just want to bring in Walter here and his thoughts. Like, you were one of the pioneering men to go and buy in France, weren't you? Quite a long time ago.
That's right, because I'm the oldest.
Well, that is true on the panel, yeah.
I think, one thing I don't ever hear mentioned that I think is relevant. We have to be aware that the French horses that are here are all selected. We have all of our own population of horses. So when we count ours, everything has culls in it. We all breed a mare, and the foal isn't what we wished it was. But that's in our system and it's in our numbers. Whereas when that horse is in France, which he is as well, he's never part of our view of when you're doing statistics and whatever. And so it's to compare like with like, we probably should drop the 25% of the horses in Ireland, because unless we're doing the complete wrong thing, we're not supposed to be buying them in France and bringing them back here. So we're kind of comparing selected horses with what the population produces. So I think they have to have some allowance for that when you're going to say that, to bear it in mind. The horses we've had a couple of Irish bred horses that we sent back there to train in France as young horses, and we didn't find any difference between them. Once they started at the same time. I think you have to be committed earlier if you're going to train them, because you don't have the option. You have to make up your mind before the store sells. So you're broken and you're started into the system. So you don't have, it's tough to come from a 3-year-old to run in 4 or 5 months. You can do that over the course of 8 or 9 months in France, and you can have them in and let them out and let them grow and let them develop, and all that's it's a great system, but you have to be committed early to it. And the nature of us is we have to try and make it some bit commercial. So we're always going to have horses that we want to have in the store sales, because we don't want to risk everything on having them in training. So it's more the individual horse rather than what they are. I think in the upbringing, I don't see a lot of difference really. I agree with Peter about them being fat, but that doesn't happen with us because just too many eating out of the pot.
You're a bit skinny yourself.
She feeds them as well.
I think I want to come back to the advancing horses here later on, but I want to divert a bit now to the when it comes to the sales and this pretty obvious polarization of stallions. Richard, I'm going to start with you on this one, and I think that perhaps there are very select sires that are being selected and topping the sales. We saw the foal sales recently, and it doesn't actually reflect, it doesn't seem to reflect directly the success of what stallions are achieving on the track. So, why is this happening, and what do we do?
I wish I knew the answer to that one. I think that'd be the oracle we could all work out this evening. Look, I mean, we know from Cheltenham Festival there were 28. It's a story well told. There were 28 races and there were 27 different winning sires. So just for the purposes of this evening, because Cheltenham nowadays has a lot of other races in it. There's handicap hurdles, there's the National Hunt Chase, there's the Fox Hunters. They're not all elite graded races. So I just look back at the last 12 months of Grade 1 winners. There were 30 individual horses won Grade 1s in Ireland in the last 12 months. 20 of them were French. So that's what we're up against. 9 were Irish, 1 I think GB. No Irish horse won 2, so there were 36 Grade 1s in all. But I think the key point is of the 30 Grade 1 winners, there were 23 different sires. So for all the polarisation in trainers and in the superpower yards and the sires, actually when you get out there into the Grade 1 or the Cheltenham environment, we're not seeing it. So I've huge sympathy with the Irish breeder, because you often hear the question, the breeders are all going to the two sides. Well, the breeders are going where they think the market is. It's got to be commercial. I really sympathise with the breeder who probably sits down and says, this would be the covering I'd like to choose for my mare, but this is the covering that commercially I probably will have to choose for my mare. And that's, if that is the case, it's disappointing, because it's not been borne out on the racecourse. 27 of 28 sires of 28 races in Cheltenham and 23 of the 30 in Grade 1 races. So it is tough times. There are ways you could look at changing that perhaps, but at the moment it is quite polarised and it is hard to see the exact answer. I suppose where I've got to on it is, I mean, for quite some time I've been supportive of the 4-year-old maiden pointer. Some pushback, obviously, that the 4-year-old, you can push them too hard, and you can push a 3-year-old, you can push a 6-year-old, you can push a 7-year-old too hard, but maybe it's a little bit easier when they're young. I've always believed that the 4-year-old pointer, I won't say he saved the Irish brand, but he's certainly given it a far better chance to compete with what Bertrand has described there, because we are getting at them earlier and we're filtering quicker. But the advantage to me of going quicker is you find out what your broodmare is. We as a group of breeders find out what the stallions are worth really. When a new stallion comes along, we wait for the 4-year-old point season, and very quickly we start to learn, real data comes in. It's not, do you like these at the sales? Now now they're running well or they're not, and you can take an informed view. So the quicker you can do that, for me, the better, particularly because in Ireland, geographically, it's a small country. So we can cover a lot of mares to one stallion. So we can go down the right track and we can cover by the right stallion. But if we go down the wrong track, we do it for 4 or 5 years, and we've done a lot of damage to the band by then. So for me, the advantage of coming back to 4-year-old, and we will get to it later, 3-year-old, I don't see any disadvantage in it, because every piece of data I ever run points to the fact that the earlier you start with the horse, the better your chances are. I read a letter actually from Brian Mayo in the Racing Post about a week ago. And of course, what I've always had thrown back at the 4-year-old argument is, but they won't last as long. And the French won't last as long. Now, it's too small a data set to get excited about, but in the year he chose, he said, look, there was one 11-year-old won a Grade 1, that was Sire de Burlay, there was one 10-year-old, that was Politologue, and there was 9 9-year-olds, 6 of them were French breds and 3 Irish breds. So the longevity argument for French breds, I don't think we can use that one anymore. So for me, the earlier we go, the quicker we find out about our stallion, the quicker we find out about our mare, the lower we keep the cost, and the quicker we find out what the good horses are.
Charles, on a positive note, lots of positives to take out, but I think it's worth bringing in the success of the Stallion Trail that was this weekend, whichever it was last weekend.
Yeah, it was a huge success, and it was great to the farms that opened up. We had 36 farms in it, looking at, I think it was 160 stallions on show, and it was brilliant. And I got around to as many of the National Hunt ones, especially knowing tonight was on, to talk to the National Hunt stallion men and that, and talk to them about their views on the industry and their willingness to change and how we do this. And yeah, so thank you to everyone that went on it, and to the Stallion Farms for opening up. Everyone seemed to be thrilled with it. But following on there, it was only 2021, and another positive, that Irish breds won 21 races in Cheltenham. It was a year that we did a stinger on Racing TV, and we did a deal with them that we paid for saying there might be 10, but if we got less, we lost. If we got more, we won, and we 21. So we were great guys that year. But it just shows it's not that long ago that we were top of the pile at Cheltenham, and all wasn't bad. One of the areas that I looked at before tonight was the number of people that were buying foals and pinhooks between 2014 and this year. And how has that number gone? And how do we attract, or how do we make it more attractive for people to get back into, pin hooking national hunt foals and try and grow that market? Like, I don't mean to say it, but at the flat foal sales this year, there was more young people buying foals and getting into that game. So how do we do that? And this is touching on what the guys are talking about. If we brought if the store sale came back a year or 2 years, would it make it more attractive for more young people, for more people to get into this game, to take a chance on pinhooking foals and trying to drive a bigger market? Just one of the stats I looked up, like this year at the Fairy House foal sale, there was 310 individual buyers of foals. In 2014, it was 490. And that's over a 33% drop in the number of individual buyers. Now, it wasn't been as bad last year, but what we have to try and do is regenerate this market now and get more people buying foals. And the biggest thing that we're always given on is the difference between when you buy a foal to the store sale. So anything that can be done, if that helps narrow the gap, go for the 2-year-old store. We introduce a whole new scheme for 3-year-olds. Well, then you're creating a new market that maybe not only helps the breed, but helps the foal seller generate a bigger market, or more people have confidence in getting into this game.
Bertie, just going back to the stallion aspect, it's a very different approach. It is a very different approach in France. You have, I suppose, there is more diversification of stallion use. Well, I say that's not probably strictly true, but a lot of the top stallions, they've raced over jumps, which I think has to be significant.
Yeah, it has been a worry because nowadays, as much as you guys are just thinking what type of blood works or doesn't work, and you do concentrate a lot of the same bloodlines, we have a bit more diversity through the jumping, which is a plus. But we are worried now in France of breeding diesels, we call them. It's just because a diesel is a slow horse. It's just a horse that just takes time. Might have a turbo, but it might not. And the whole purpose, bring these true, exactly like Anthony said, we've been racing, and one of the great things about France, obviously, selecting on one track. You can go in England, you can win, I think there's 40 Group 1s in the UK, there's 9 in France to give you the pyramid, and you can win on the wonderful flat track, a hilly track, so the aptitude of your horse is not the same. Now, when you're running a mare that's won in Auteuil with a horse that has won in Auteuil, you think you're producing an Auteuil horse. But then suddenly some guy comes with a flat horse with a bit of class, an authorized, or you name it, or just a horse that's had an influence with us. And then you're injecting quality over jumping ability. It doesn't always work because sometimes but then France, historically, is obviously a big country, and the guy from down the road in Burgundy is not going to be driving to Saint-Dessin 6 hours to get his mare covered. So the reality is through luck. I wouldn't call it any brilliance of horsemanship, because I think overall, and you might be pleased I say that, but I think Irish people are better horsemen than the French. But you've got less common sense than us. because you're thinking commercially. We're thinking, this is the farmer that's got these Charolais cattle. He's going to go to Cercy-la-Tour. This is 10 minutes from down the road. He'll have a panel of horses. Historically, some have worked. You've had some that have worked. Some have been great failures. But at least these guys, these 200 or 300 mares, go to these 4 stallions. Then the odd one goes up north because he's made a few quid and he thinks he's brighter than the others. He goes to Saint-Dessin, but that might not work with his mare. So historically, you've got east, west, which is very much the stronger part of national hunt in France, and Normandy, obviously, Normandy, west, east a little, and central France. So all these 4 regions would have their different stallions with local breeders that be using them. You mentioned Denham Red earlier. Denham Red was in a region where all the good horses were bred because he was just a neighbour's. Nothing was clever about it, but it was just the way it was done. And because the mare has added value, because she's a stakes mare, because she's a winner in Auteuil, you actually have less influence on the stallion. So you might sell very well. Back, if you got a good-looking Denham Red back in the day, you would have sold it nicely. And now things are getting a bit different. We are polarizing a bit like you guys, and this is becoming our danger, where everybody goes for the Dr. Dinos, everybody goes for the Saint-Dessins, but over jumps, as you know, a good stallion is a dead stallion. And especially here, because you wait another 2 years than us to find out how good the stallion is. So when you've got a good one, everybody is in a gully to go to it. Whether in France we find out 2 years earlier, and on the scale of things, as Richard was saying, less damage is done, earlier. But sorry, that's a different subject. But you obviously know 2 years earlier for everything, for your mare, for your stallion. So in a way, you're more commercial than the Irish is trying to be commercial, because he's waited 2 years. 2 years of how many mares he's been covering, how many, so the wastage is there. So shortening the pen is definitely the way forward again.
So Peter, would there be, if we talk about the commercialization, do you think it's a bit of a conflict of interest when, I suppose, does it become a situation that you breed for the sales ring and not for the race course? Is there a chasm in that, or is that just not the case?
Well, I think in Ireland, traditionally we've been sellers, so we've always bred to sell, and I think that's always going to be the way. But and the old saying is there's a big difference between a sales horse and a race horse, and even I myself, if I'm going out to buy a foal, if I'm going out to buy a racehorse, one for an end user, or buying a foal to trade on, I'm looking at two different things. Because I can forgive a lot more when I'm buying one to race, which makes absolutely no sense, but that's the way, because I need to have the perfect horse when I'm bringing it back as a 3-year-old. But surely, success breeds success. And if you, be it a pinhooker, a breeder, a stallion master, whatever angle you're at, an agent, if you're getting results on the track, you'll get results. You should get results in the sales ring. And I agree with Freddie in that, and with Richard about if we can get to work earlier with these horses. And we've been talking about this for years, by the way. We did a video years ago with your mother-in-law about breeding, breaking young horses.
I remember it.
For the ITBA. Doing more, but we are doing more. And we have improved a lot. I think most of the major store consigners, Bertrand will say it's not early enough, but we personally, and I know most of the other big store consigners all have their 3-year-olds in right now, and they're breaking them and they're driving them, and which was never, as 2-year-olds rising 3. So we've made big progress, and we're getting there. And so, if you'd have done that years ago, trainers, Anthony Bromley would have come up to the door and you said, "Oh, what have you done with this?" "Well, I've broken it." "Oh, it must be tried." Especially if it was 4. But I think we're making progress. We're definitely making progress.
I remember Nicky Henderson was at one of these things years ago, and they said, "What would you like, Nicky?" "Oh, I love a 4-year-old, and would you like it broken in?" "I think so, yes." And it was someone like Ted Walsh or someone like that. He said, "And what do you think, Ted?" He said, "I'd like to have a 3-year-old, break it in, try it, and then sell it to Nicky Henderson when it's broken in." So that was a while ago. But I think it would be interesting if you started doing 3-year-old bumpers in Ireland. I don't know. Has that ever been mooted? It doesn't seem to have ever been embraced. Yorton put on a sale for 2-year-old stores that seems to be very successful, and gets them loose schooling for videos there, and that seems to be quite useful. I don't know. Then you might get young people, if they could buy a foal and be selling it as a 2-year-old, the turnaround's not quite so long. It's an 18-month turnaround. These are just sort of things I'm just throwing out there. I haven't really thought about it too strongly, but it's making me think, yes, the pinhookers want a quick turn. Foal to 3-year-olds look too long term, and I think you've lost a lot of pinhookers. That's your issue at the moment is your foal sales, where everyone just went on about 5 stallions. I mean, it's bonkers, right? I mean, if Minty and I buy heaps of stores, and Tessie, High Flyer would be some of the, numerically, one of the highest buyers of stores. And the stallions, I mean, we look at every store. We're just looking for a nice horse. And we're certainly not trying to chase around every blue Brazil and walk in the park. We haven't got the budgets for that for all our clients, but we look at everything. And literally, I can hardly think of a stallion we won't pull out the door. I think Arcadia had a little moment a few years ago. We wouldn't touch one of them. And then I thought for a little while I wasn't going to go for a leading light. And then, hold on, last year I bought a horse, a pointer, south of the border for 145 grand. Hold on, I wasn't even sure I'd buy a leading light as a store. Bought a pointer and he's unbeaten. You know, you've got to be a bit more open-minded about it. We will buy horses if they look like race horses. And the breeders, I don't think you want to be going down this line of having 300 foals by a certain stallion. It's just not, I don't know, it can pollute the breed if it doesn't work out, because you're doing it with unproven sires as well. It's not all the proven sires are getting the 300 mares. And I do just think, I've always been as open-minded about the sires. When I'm buying horses, and Minty's the same, and don't think what's right for your mare, the nicks and the physique of the stallion to your mare and all those sort of things, and what clicks in the family. Think of those things first and foremost, because having a temperamental mare, putting it to a temperamental stallion, you're going to get a bloody nutcase. I mean, but just because but Frank down the road, he made a load of money with one of those sires. That's not the way to do your breeding, surely. But people seem to do it. They flock like lemmings off a cliff. Use do what you think's intelligent, and stick to it. And if you've got an athlete that you've worked out this will work because my mare will suit this stallion, trust to your own gut thing, because we have good money for stores and racehorses and prospects. I mean, we are open-minded at the store sales. I think it's the foal trades made this really polarized thing at the moment, and because you've only got a small number of people buying, but you've got a bit of a broader sense when you've got the agents and the trainers buying as 3-year-old stores. And the Irish point-to-point men, yes, they've slightly polarized you a bit, because they find it easier to sell a blue Brazil winning 4-year-old pointer for big money, or a walk in the park the same. And so I can see why that comes, but you can still sell them by lesser sires for big money too.
Can I ask a question?
You certainly can.
I'm going to ask this, Charles here, ITM. So, high flyer are broad-minded. I bought 22 national foals so far this year of this crop. I think about 14 different stallions, so it's a wide range of stallions. And I think, people need to be more broad-minded. How do we make them more broad-minded? Marketing. Should ITBM be doing more marketing on a wider range of stallions? Selling that story.
And that's something it's something we try to do with every winner. We're on, we're putting more and more money into, social media side and away from print, that people can see it more, the success that the Irish bred is having. So we're trying to promote as many stallions as we possibly can. The stallion trail was one way of getting out and getting that open, to make it as wide a base and show people that there are more stallions out there, and there's a lot of very, very, very good stallions out there. One of the issues that we had this year at the foal sales was, and people coming to us, and there could be 60, 70, 80 by the one sire in the sale, and someone buys. But if you're not in the top 25% foals by that sire, it's very, very difficult. So it was the sheer number of certain foals that were, and they weren't walking the parks or blue Brazils, but there was the sheer number by certain sires that were in the catalogues that made it difficult for people to stand out with their foal, which was one of the big issues we have. We're open to try anything, and we will promote every way we can promote stallion and promote the Irish bred as best we can. What we're doing now is, especially in the National Hunt, we're trying to get more into the UK, to give more to the UK owners and trainers, to incentivise them more to come to Ireland. We're looking at a range of suite of products this year to get these guys in, to buy the stores and do that. And articles we commissioned. We tried to commission a newspaper here to run an article on the Irish bred but they wanted to make it more a debate about the French bred. And we said, no, this has to be an article to promote everything to do with the Irish bred. We don't want the word French in this paper. We just want to promote the best we have. But
you're going to have a problem, because how many French breads are going through topping or not topping or being, and that's another problem we need to address. Because, obviously you're going to end up promoting these stallions. They're going to get more popular from Irish Pinockers to come to France. They're going to be more of them purchased. Why go and breed a horse if you can buy one in the field? Have a few glasses of claret or sunshine. And if you're in France, buy a couple of foals for 18 grand from a guy that breeds cattle and doesn't give a shit. You end up...
and we don't.
Yeah.
In France is always
we won't promote. We won't promote.
But it's true. So you end up in a situation where, excuse me, but you're promoting that stallion, you're promoting that business to happen, but then these horses leave the French market. It's no good for us either, and that's another problem we need to address. Our races are getting weaker. That's a problem. Races are definitely getting weaker. Don't get me wrong. There's still the same price tag for them, but the race is not as good, because incredible horsemen that you all are, or most of you are, is that right? Yeah. Okay. Just literally come here to buy, just this top class individual. And they buy the best, don't get me wrong. They don't, if they see 10 in a paddock, they don't pick the black duck or the black sheep, whatever you call it. They just go and buy the nice one. And that nice one goes out of French system, goes out of your system, because you haven't bred this one. So somebody's made a few quid in reselling him, but then the Irish breeder is going to say to you, why should I bother just going to have a bloody mare, just getting that mare covered, travel miles down the country, where I can go to France and get it bought. So you're not helping the breeders, and you're not helping France, if I might defend my own parish.
But we don't promote the French bred.
It's automatic, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Automatic by result of sales.
Yeah. And that is the problem. Like, there's a larger portion of French breds are in our sales catalogues now, and it has grown from about 10% 10 years ago to now, Richard, up to close on over 22%. Yeah. So it has increased, and that's through more Irish guys going to France and buying foals. And that's not what we want. And we're trying to, and we're always watching the people that are coming in and see, is there people only... Like we've done a study last year to see who came in and bought the French breds. Now, luckily, everyone that came in from abroad at the stores that bought a French bred also bought an Irish bred. Like there was nobody came in specifically to the store sale of UK buyers that only bought a French bred. And that was something that we checked. So, like, our job is to get people into the sales and hope like hell that they buy the Irish bred. We promote the Irish bred in the sale. We don't promote the French bred in the sale. We try to do everything we can. And like it kills us when the sale is topped to buy a French bred horse, because it's taken away one of our key headlines, our key stats that we want to throw out.
But Charlie, one major pinhooker last year, who pinhooks both French and Irish horses, said he was at the store sales, and a number of people, he said, a sizable number of people didn't want, they specifically said, we only want to look at your French bred horses.
Well, I can't...
Yeah, could I, just to take that one maybe, I mean, I look at this business as, look at the industry as if it was a business, and if you owned it, you owned this entire thing, you're Bernie Eccleston to horse racing, right? This is the marketing department here. Somewhere else we make the product. Charles can only market the product that we make. And if there were 20 Irish bred winners at the Cheltenham Festival, you're out the gap, and you've seen that opportunity. You've pushed it out through Racing TV and however else you can. But there is a responsibility on us to produce the product that works. The one thing I do believe, though, is people say this point-to-point thing, it has evolved, it has changed everything. I believe it's evolving. It hasn't finished evolving. So if you look at 10 years ago, well, 2012, the leading purchaser of point-to-pointers at the Derby sale was Andy Slattery, and he spent 65,000. And 14 years later, it's a very, very different picture. And even now they're changing their buying behaviours from what I'm seeing. And we all look at it differently, but what I see was 3 to 4 to 5 years ago, that good strapping presence, you know all the lines we have, he'd fill your eyes, good size of a horse, good stamp of a chaser. They'd buy him, not blindly, they're adept and they're clever, but a little bit blindly. But now they're introducing the pedigree a whole lot more. So to me, what has happened is the point-to-point purchaser who hoovered up, we'll say, the August sale horse, and then he dipped into the Land Rover, into the Derby sale, and then he built. He was hoovering up the 5 to 30 grand horse, and I mean the 5,000 horse. One big dude cost 8,000, and he was the first leg on the ladder for Donegal Doyle. And don't forget that that's where he began, with one horse that I think he made 16,000 in Cheltenham. So they were hoovering up them. The end user was buying the top stores, but they've continued to move up and they've become more competitive. To me, society wants this quick return, and they're not as prepared to take time over anything, especially not a racehorse. So the end users are less inclined to be involved in stores, and we can see that. So the point-to-point guy is able now with his 50 to 70,000 to buy what might once have been a 100,000 store, but he's able to buy that, and there's not as many people propping up that 5 to 20,000. And that to me is why the store sales are struggling, because if I buy a foal and I want to get that 20,000, the point-to-point man has gone on me. He's gone up to 50,000. There's some of them there are, but they're not as many as they used to be. And it's that evolution that's causing the challenge at the bottom end of the foals for me, that the point-to-point man has moved up. And the final point I'd make on this is both Peter and Anthony have said about being able to forgive. I speak to Anthony a lot during sales, obviously see a lot of him, and he absolutely forgives stallions, more than probably most, I'd say. You know, he's prepared to look at the individual and go, I like him. I didn't think I would, sire, or others, but I do like him. And Peter has said he's able to forgive. But remember, with the evolution of the point-to-point person, he's now a source of purchaser that has to buy a sales horse once more. So that's causing your polarization. He can't forgive solely and say, I think that's a racehorse. Because even if he thinks it's a racehorse, he still has to sell him in a year's time. So it's added another layer of trying to get the perfect sales horse on top of a racehorse. So all of this is evolving, but I would probably excuse ITM, because I do think when we do get IREs, we're quick to promote them and do our thing. But do be aware, for me anyway, the point-to-point thing is still evolving. It's not fully evolved. And we're feeling the impact of that all the time.
So I just want to bring Walter in on this one. Just what Richard's suggesting is that the structure is flawed, given the way the horses are now, I suppose, going through the system to get to the race course. So I don't know what you feel on this structure.
You know, when you talk about this year's wholesales and why are they so polarised, for us anyway, the cost of production is the thing. Our cost of production has gone up 75 to 80% in the last 3 years.
So your margins
so
are inevitably reduced.
So we're then looking at a horse, any foal we're going to buy, if we're going to reconsign him, it's absolutely useless. We'd have to get him for free if you're going to be able to buy him off me for 25,000, when you're after forgiving because you didn't like, because the sire isn't popular. So for the likes of us then, when we walk in to buy a foal, we're now looking at a horse and saying, you're going to have to make 50 or 60 grand, or there's really no point in us buying them. And we're probably guilty of giving too much for the foal that we think is going to do that. And we're probably giving the end user's price for him in the foal sale this year. But that's drawn us towards those proven mares that by their nature, the people that have them go to the proven sire because they can afford to go to him. So the economics makes it difficult for us to be too forgiving. And you can forgive them when you've got form, but then we've got to find that out as well. You know, and it's not pleading with it, but it's so that, you know, a 10 grand foal is a difficult one for us. We'd love to buy him for it, of course we would, but when we come to sell him again, our cost of production in the meantime has gone from 10,000 to 20,000 just to get him in the gate, and that assumes that he lived and he grew and he was sound and all the rest of it, you know. So from the seller's point of view, we're being drawn more towards what are perceived to be the better one.
Peter, if you pick up on that one in terms of the breeder's in not in an easy position. I know you said that there's plenty of positives, but that the margins are vastly reduced given the costs going up, so the hand is forced. And I know money doesn't appear out of nowhere, but is there something to look at to give breeders more reward on the racetrack, so that perhaps that makes them look in a different direction? Or is that just still quite difficult to achieve?
Well, you know, but first of all, I was listening to a podcast over Christmas time of Roger O'Callaghan being interviewed by Jamie Railton. And one of the first things Roger O'Callaghan said was, because make no mistake, the flat fold sales were also difficult this year, very, very polarised. And so Jamie asked him, what would you say to breeders and what should they do? And Roger went, look at yourself, look at yourselves. People are very quick to blame the game. Maybe they should be blaming themselves. So I know people don't want to hear this, and it's not a popular thing to say. And sadly, I'm old enough that this is probably the second or third downturn I've lived through, and we've had similar hand-wringing, and what are we going to do, and what are we going to do for the smaller breeder, and should we subsidise the breeder? And again, I put my hand up, and I'm going to say the same thing again. I'm not going to be popular for saying it. You need to look at your mare. You need to look at what you're breeding from. If she's not good enough to be commercial, to pay for herself, unless you're doing it for a hobby, you shouldn't be breeding from her.
So really, we're putting too much emphasis on the sire. We should pay more attention to the mare.
I think the mare is everything, and as I said earlier, I think that's where France, and Anthony, I think, agreed with me. I think that's where the French have a huge advantage, because they've had generations upon generations of mares who have raced. The breeding from sound stock. We've bred from too many unraced mares over the years. But as I say, that's changing. It is changing. Now, people are going to come back to me and go, well, we can't afford to buy the Cavegas and the Annie Powers and the Honeysuckles and the, whatever, all these top class mares. But there's so many more of these race mares coming on the market now. There's more and more of them every year, because there's more and more of them racing, and they're actually becoming more and more affordable. If you look at some of the mare sales this year, there was a lot of top class race mares that were actually quite buyable. And then you could move down, you could buy a nice bumper winning mare who was a half-sister black type horse, quite reasonably. People need, I know it's easy for me to say, I'm sitting here and you're going to go, people need to look at what they're breeding from. And that's how, so all the subsidies in the world, all the help, I made a horrible, years ago, and I got in a lot of trouble about it. I was in the noughties, the time of the crash, and people were going, oh, we need to subsidise the small breeders. And I went, people want to be paid to get off a sinking ship. You want to be paid to get off the sinking ship. Surely you should just step off it. As far as help is concerned, I think the mares, the French, again, have a huge advantage with their breeders' premiums, and everything is all very good. The Brits have their GB bonus, which is very good for fillies. And we have our mares bonus scheme, which I think needs to grow and needs to get stronger. And that's a huge, huge advantage. I know the breeder will say, oh, I'm not getting it, the owner's getting the bonus. Well, actually, no, the breeder's going to get it by feeding down. It's going to drip down, because already fillies are making more money at the sales. I don't know what the stats are, Richard might have, how many mares, 3-year-old mares have topped the store sales in the last few years, quite a few.
I know it is. The average price is increasing incredibly.
But they've topped the sales.
Yeah.
They've topped the point-to-point sales.
Yeah, they have. More than once.
I've
lost the run of myself and gone nuts.
So it's interesting to say about the mares. Oh, hello. The mares. So you'll get a mare makes 500 grand. Was it Walters at the Punchestown sale, having won his won a point by a mile.
Him again.
Yeah. But it's.
That's why he's on the panel.
I got you.
But it's interesting what Peter said. You try to sell your race mare when she's finished, you've suddenly gone from about hundreds of people wanted to buy your filly when she was got a race potential, and there's hardly anyone about when you're trying to sell your mare. And there's some, I couldn't believe, well, you know, some of my owners who aren't necessarily big into breeding can't believe how little their really good race mare is worth when they suddenly come to sell it. And they said, well, hold on, a point-to-point mare just made 300 grand. Why is my mare only worth 30 and she's rated 140 or something like this, you know? And I said, well, because her career's finished and now your market is only to about 2 or 3 people. There's just no one buying broodmares, and
They're much more viable than they were.
Exactly.
And they're getting more and more viable.
In this autumn, and I mean, there's some nice mares in at Doncaster. I see it next week, and you just wonder who's going to be there to buy them, because there are some good hard race mares, and I think they may not have all black type pedigrees, but might be black type themselves. I think there's an element of that in the French side of things. They do stick with tried mares. They do race. You are right. We brought up right at the very outset. The broodmare ban is very important, and they do go from proven. The whole thing in France, you've got to try your mare. They don't like retire one unraced. I mean, why are they unraced? Unsound or bad of the wind. You know, that's and how many mares have we seen sadly in Irish catalogues for years? You know, I've been doing it long enough to see it. Heaps of unraced mares, and you don't know if it's. And then you talk to the breeders. Yeah, I was going to keep the family all along, and this, that, and the other. No, it was probably rotten winded. You didn't care really. You just covered it. And I do. I'm going to digress again though. But the stallion thing is interesting. We're going on strong strength about the broodmare ban, but the French thing is interesting. So many of their stallions are proven. They might be diesels, as Bertie said, but they've been proven in soft ground, over jumps, at Auteuil, and done it as three-year-olds. And there has to be, if you're thinking of, when you're buying a horse, you're trying to keep all the probability as much on your side of the fence as you can. So if you can say 100% of the genes have been proven it to go 2 miles as 3-year-olds, over jumps, bang, and jump, and their hurdles in France are like chases, you know, steeple fences, and you think, well, hold on, that's stacking a lot of things in your favour, because that's what I want to do. I want to go round Naas and in heavy ground as a youngster and go and do this, or go and win a point-to-point at Bell Harbour and sell it for a while. This is what you're trying to do. So if you're breeding with top and bottom of your pedigree, have got proven jumping, soft ground, then there's got to be, that's not rocket science. That should work, you know, if you put it all together. And if we're looking at the moment, there's heaps of French stallions that were proven Auteuil jumpers. Going back to, you know, Cap Guard, Saint-Dessin, further back Cyborg, Villez. Yeah, Denham Red was a good jumper as well. There are plenty of French stallions which weren't. Blue Brazil was a group flat horse who went a bit jumping.
But he won 3-time quite well.
Yeah, and even Walk the Park did win at Auteuil over jumps. Yeah. But the horse like Cap Guard and Saint-Dessin, they didn't even run on the flat. They just go straight into jumping with Metayer as 3-year-olds and with top 3-year-olds. There's a whole raft of new stallions in France like it at the moment, all coming through the ranks, and we'll see which ones work and which don't. But Beaumec de Huel and Gaillard de Burlay, Navarre de Burlay, Moses Hass a bit younger. These are all Group 1 jumpers, but as 3-year-olds. And it is fascinating that the only way we get them in Ireland is after they've proven themselves, and you go in and buy them. Because they're now standing, some of them in but if there's one stallion I was going to say, Rosalia is an Irish stallion.
He's very French.
I know. He won the French champion hurdle. And I love the fact that they never said they said he was the French champion hurdler. So imagine how they promoted him. Did anyone realise that the French champion hurdle is 3 miles 1.5 or 3 miles 2? Like if they just said he was the French champion hurdler, well, we all just assumed, oh yeah, champion hurdler, that's all right. I mean, no wonder he got so many national horses, Rosalia, because he was a 3.5 miler himself, but they didn't have wind problems and they were sound and tough. So he became an Irish stallion, again, the global thing, but from way back, from 30 years ago. It was there then, but we sort of weren't really looking. But, you know, Rosalia's got French blood all in your mares. for a long time.
That goes far beyond that. If you go back 10 years ago, 2 of the top 15 sires in Ireland were IRE, and today 4 of the top 10, I think, in Ireland are IRE. So we have forever and a day been bringing in USA, GB, or whatever it is. This is not new. We're bringing it in. It does sometimes question, when you actually say IRE, and we know what it means, but to the outsider looking in, if we keep bringing in different, we bring the best that we can in, obviously, and as it was mentioned earlier, you don't go elsewhere to bring anything other than the best, but there's such a quantity of other bloodlines coming in that it mightn't be as simple for outsiders to identify IRE. I know what that means, I know what it stands for, I know it's generations of IRE, because it's now not generations of IRE. If 2 of the top 15 stallions 10 years ago were IRE, we've brought all of this in. So I suppose any product you sell needs a USP, it needs a unique selling point. And ours used to be the generations of Irish bred. We were the best. Now it's a little bit different. The French can cross, we can cross. The GBs are increasing, we can see that. And we just need to fight our corner a bit more now on the back of that.
And then the big thing, I reckon I was talking to John Murphy down in Cork, the trainer, about his horse there, White Birch. So he was a good horse last year, 3-year-old and that. And what would be the chance of a horse like that aiming for the Triumph Hurdle? He wouldn't be quite good enough to make it as a stallion on the flat, but if he went for a Triumph Hurdle. And he said the biggest problem for us in Ireland with those type of horses, they're worth millions to go to Australia. So all those type of horses that you'd like to put over a hurdle or that, the demand for that horse as a stayer in Australia is huge, and taking a lot of those horses out of here. Because he said he'd love all day long to have gone that route, but he's just too valuable for the Australian market. So a lot of those staying type horses, that's where they go, unfortunately. Or fortunately.
I want to bring it back to the programme book to have the idea of, I think what we've discussed sees very clearly that actually perhaps there's an incentive for things to move a bit quicker. And if we are going to, for that to happen, you'd have to create a more extensive 3-year-old programme for hurdlers, possibly for bumpers, but perhaps, maybe Anthony, you're the best one to start on this, perhaps something in Ireland should exist a bit like in the UK where they started the junior national hunt hurdles. So, there's just the flat horses are not eligible to run in it. I mean, we definitely thought about bringing a horse ourselves over there to run him, because it looked like a great opportunity where you weren't coming up against flat horses and horses that hadn't run. So I could see the attractiveness of it.
I like the idea of it. Not sure how well it's going in England just yet, but I think you have to go through those first few years of getting it established, and then people buy and clearly have a defined route of going for it, because they haven't been some of the greatest sites, because they're all so green. And they're running all over the place, going to the first and second hurdles, that actually you wouldn't mind a few that have already raced beforehand.
In Ireland, though, you'd have a massive advantage in the respect that you have the schooling races, so they're going to be much sharper.
Yes. I mean, I think the principle of it is good. I'm not sure how well it's, as I say, I'm not sure how well it's going quite well in England just at the moment. Not every trainer's quite embraced it. But Ireland would be a place where you could do, because you could see an angle commerciability of selling a horse and doing stuff. It could be an angle. I'm not sure how it would go down, really.
What would you think, Walter, on that one?
I think you could start off with the fillies. For the last number of years, we have our own AQPS breed, because our foals would tick when we're registering them with Weatherby's if they're specifically jump spread.
Yeah.
And, I think if you've got a well-bred filly here, you have to wait 2 years till she's 5 really before you can run her in those mares race or the back end of 4 anyway. So you have 20,000 spent, and if she's the commercial reality is if she's a half sister to a graded horse, she could have 2 foals bred in the meantime, and I could have gone to Fairy House and I could have sold them twice. Now equally they could be worth nothing, but what I'm saying is if you brought back the time that you tried the mares at least, and if you had a series for those and finish in Punchestown with a black type race or whatever. That those mares will get into training sooner. There'll be an incentive for the breeder because they could earn the prize money that would be the same as the first foal out of them. And you might get those mares, the knowledge you're looking for. if you didn't, I don't know that you'd have enough to support the others, but if you confine it to the jump spread ones, then even if they are a little bit backward, it's still only like taking on like.
I think that's, to me, Bertie, that would be a key aspect for here. But I suppose just plenty of people know about the programme there, but there are the opportunities for 3-year-olds are, they're extensive.
Definitely, and I think, don't get me wrong, we are talking of the same type of horses, exactly like Walter says. You have your own QPS, which means other than thoroughbred in French, but you've got the very same breed. The breed is no different. The horsemen are not different. They're just a way to do it. And I think we just had a quick Lord Bagenal curry just before we sat here. And interestingly, we said, but we've been talking about these things for years. I don't know, this is my first time here, but I mean, interestingly, and nothing changed. I just asking, anybody has got a valid reason? Has anybody got a valid reason not to do it? Because he's not a rocket scientist. It's proven, and I've got some stats which are staggering, that explains that a horse, the earlier you do with him, the better it will be, and the sound. This was an English study on the Brian May.
Share those stats.
Yes, I mean those.
Share,
I mean, you're
share.
not going to like them. I just tighten
Share.
my vest here.
We'd love to share.
Okay, so leading jump horses. I don't know how many there are, but leading jump horses that have debuted. Okay, so their first run, 60% before the end of the third year. This is top leading horses. Great Britain and Ireland, 60%. Okay, so this is the pool of top class horses. Middle of their fourth year, 83%. End of their fourth year, 94%. So sorry, excuse me, I was reading the wrong, this is in France. So at the end of their third year, top class horses, 60% have run before the end of their third year. Middle of their fourth year, 83% have debuted, and that before the end of their fourth year, 94%. In the UK, this is between 2010 and 2020. In the UK, 2% have made a debut before the end of the third year. Middle of their fourth year, 22% have made a debut. Before the end of their fourth year, 53%. Okay, now we're moving to more modern statistics. So that goes back to 2010, but all the way to 2023. French horses, 42%, because before the end of the third year, because the French do realize, like you were saying earlier, that they've gone too hard with them in the spring. So most of them give them a debut and then time off in the summer and then autumn campaign. So even the French have adapted their system, as exactly Anthony was saying. So 42% have run before the end of the third year. 85% of them have run by the middle of their fourth year. 85%. This is top class horses. And 100% would have run before the end of their fourth year. 100%. Now I'm going to give you the Irish figure for this corresponding date. 8% in Ireland and the UK for end of 3. Middle of 4, 33%. End of 4, 62%. So whichever way you want to read these figures, what's staggering is where have the 40% gone from 100 to 62, where is the 94% gone for 53? So the point I'm making is there is a vast amount of horses that just disappear. These horses haven't performed in a way that they can be top leading horses. So
On some of the statistics there, if you included Monk's Grange, I'd say that the schooling grounds in Ireland, the 3-year-olds have debuted, they'd all have debuted.
they've debuted with, this is with open races, because we obviously don't know point to point. I know from my Irish connection friends what point to points are, but I think point to point is not only the solution, and it's half a solution.
But they're in work, but they don't, a lot of them fall out of the system.
Yeah.
The wastage is high. And the top class horse can cope with nearly any, you can do a lot of things with him in his youth anyway, and he'll still be a top class horse. But I think there's more of it. We see it with the smaller trainers around us, that constantly when they go there, that the owners are not prepared. They stop sooner because the expenses are so high. So there's a big wastage rate early on there, even from the ones that get into training.
So again, that goes back to the whole system again. It's a no-brainer. go back to the beginning of our conversation, just do it earlier. You're saving money. Everybody's saving money. You know sooner. You spend less money. And then when you start to sell 2-year-olds, you create 3-year-olds. I can't imagine, the English system probably hasn't hooked, but clearly, Anthony, you might not nudge me for that, but clearly the English economy is not going as well as the Irish economy of a jump. For one reason is most of the big owners, clearly have taken over maybe more Ireland in the last 10 years. I don't know when the balance has gone for Ireland towards England, but clearly with all the owners in this country, it shouldn't be too difficult to create some 3-year-old races. I don't believe in bumpers myself because the QPS is one of the route they've taken, and I don't think that's a great route, because learning a horse to go fast and not realizing there's an obstacle, I think it makes no sense, but that's for me to like or dislike. But I mean, just create juvenile hurdle by the end. All these incredible horsemen, all these point-to-point guys that manage to bring a horse tip-top, at the end of the season to sell him for 400 grand, clearly they'll do exactly the same as 3-year-olds. And these very guys are the best breeze-up guy in all of Europe. So these guys are able to bring you a horse in Tats or in Goffs to be a wonderful top-class 2-year-old to make a hell of a clock by April or May of his second year, and the guy cannot train a 3-year-old to win over hurdles. It just makes no sense. So I'd love you to do an ITB in France. You come and teach us how to do breeze-ups, and we'll teach you how to do jumpers. But I think we have to, you have to put in motion. You can't be talking about it only.
Just, Richard, let's just say the program came around, would it incentivize 2-year-old sales or not?
It's just supply and demand is the law of any market. I mean, I had the same stats there as Bertie had, and the interesting thing is we're almost exactly 1 year behind. There's a lot of numbers thrown out there, so just to remind you again that the number of French-bred horses that ran by the middle of their 4-year-old year was 83%, and in Ireland that equivalent figure is 22%. But the figure I'm going to take out of it is, I'm going to cross figures a little bit, the number of French-bred horses that run at the end of their 3-year-old year, 60%. The number of Irish-bred horses that run at the end of their 3-year-old year, 4-year-old year, 1 year later, is 53%. Now that's close enough to say it's on par. So we are just running 1 year behind. That's what we're doing. We're running 1 year behind. And it's you look at those linear statistics, but actually when you cross them, you can see exactly where we're at. We're 1 year behind. And that makes complete sense because Envo Alain won the first 4-year-old maiden of the 4-year-old spring season in Ballinaboula. That was the first time he was legally allowed to jump a jump in Ireland. He legally couldn't jump a jump before that. It was illegal. Fast or Slow had won a 3-year-old chase, but Envo Alain was waiting for that chance. So, look, I can see nothing, and I haven't for probably 15 years since the time you and I were in Northern Ireland, seen any negative in starting earlier. If you own the animal, you've 1 year's less keep to pay for. If I'm the end user buying it off you, you're prepared to take 5,000 less or whatever it is because that's your keep less. Peter's worried about them getting too heavy. The chances of them getting heavier when they're not on grass and they're in training is less. The chance of the person with the mare finding out is the mare good, bad or indifferent is quicker, less cost because you can make a more informed decision quicker, and the chance of finding out which stallions are the ones to follow and which ones are the ones to avoid is quicker. So I've heard an awful, a bit like Bertie, and Peter, we get a bit frustrated. We've been talking about this for a long time. We haven't made the progression. The biggest challenge was why haven't we done it? It's a huge industry chicken and egg. Goffs could put on a 2-year-old sale tomorrow, but in the absence of a 3-year-old program, we'd be at nothing. And we've had 2-year-olds in the Derby sale before, and Yorton is there doing it at a small quantity level. If we as an industry put on a 3-year-old program in the absence of supply, that would fall over a cliff as well. So it takes a lot of joined up thinking, and then you're crossing your fingers and hoping that the spend is there, because at the moment the guys are feeding this 3-year-old into 4-year-old system, And is there enough cash flow to go and do the 2 and 3 year old thing as well? It's got to fit. I've seen some of the point-to-point guys try breeze ups, but it doesn't fit the model. So you'd nearly have to find the time of year. If we believe they're the guys who are going to do it, you've got to find the time of year that they have a little window, and does that fit when the 3 year old should go? So it's very easy to say we should go 3 year old. I'm hugely behind it, as you can understand by now. But it isn't as simple to work out exactly how to get it right. When do you put on the races? When do you feed for those races? And who's going to buy them? So the end solution is simple. The journey to it will have bumps, and I admire the fact that the UK tried it. I won't say it's the wrong country to try it in, but we are more sellers, so we're more driven to feed those races. So in a long-winded way, yes, we'd love to have sales feed. Well, I personally would love to have sales feeding the 3 year olds, because I think that would be good for the entire band. But there are a lot of challenges to get there, and it would take a lot of joined-up thinking.
I just want to address the existing programme book, and then I'm going to throw out the questions. But Peter, I was talking to you earlier, but I suppose the races existing for mares I want to talk about. There's been talk of changing them. They're not competitive enough. I know you don't agree with that side of things. I suppose I'm particularly referring to Cheltenham in this case, the mares hurdle and the mares chase.
Yeah, so my good friend Kevin Blake, who is a good friend, wrote 2 very good articles at the races website of the last 2 weeks about changing making changes to Cheltenham to a number of races within the 4-day format. And I agree with him especially in the novice chase division. I think there's too many novice chases. And he also argued there's too many novice hurdles, too much choice, and that's fair enough. Patrick Mullins there in the front row, he wouldn't agree. But then he attacked, predictably, the mares' races, and funnily enough, I'm not going to agree with him there. He tried to make out that the mare's hurdle, the mare's chase, and the mare's novice hurdle should all be basically made mare's handicap hurdles, and that these races are taking away from the main attraction, as in the mare's hurdle from the champion hurdle and the mare's chase from the Gold Cup, and basically saying that they're all being farmed by Patrick's dad, and that it needs to be changed. Of course, I disagree wholeheartedly. There's only been 2 mares in the last 6 or 7 years in the mares hurdle that have been good enough to compete in the champion hurdle, Honeysuckle and Epitaph, and they both won the champion hurdle. No other mare that's competed in the mares hurdle, even with the mares allowance, would be competitive in the champion hurdle. So that race is not taking away from the champion hurdle. The existence of these races has been a huge factor in the rise of the mare in Ireland and in Britain. And I think as breeders, we need to be very aware that there may be moves to attack these races and change these races, and I think we need to be very strong in defending them. The mare's chase it's only been in existence for 3 years, and not one of those mares, the winner called Reevy, Impervious last year, and Ellie May, none of those mares, even with the mare's allowance, would be competitive in a Gold Cup. So they're not taken from the Gold Cup. They've been wonderful spectacles in their own right. Impervious's race last year was a wonderful race to watch and a huge addition to Cheltenham. And I know I'm slightly biased, but would anyone want to miss that wonderful occasion last year when Honeysuckle came back and won the mare's hurdle? So I don't know what anybody else thinks here. Richard, I'd be interested to hear what you want to say to that.
We had a seminar in 2012 in Leopardstown. It was an excellent seminar at the time. And I brought in those very stats of its time. And I think since Dawn Run and Flaky Dove, no mare had been bordering on being competitive in a Champion Hurdle, Champion Chaser Gold Cup to the point that they had stopped entering. So I think Lady Cricket, Like a Butterfly, Asian Maze and Burnt Oak had run or entered, but not with any degree of competitiveness. So the problem then we had with the mares is there was no demand for the mare, because the one thing, if you remove the dream from the racehorse, you're falling down to their weight on the scales very quickly. And by producing the mares program with an ultimate grade 1 dream, you now brought trade. And yeah, the mares bonus came along with it. I think Fairy House had the first grade 1, and Glenn's Melody might have won one of the first ones, but that brought a dream to the mare, and it brought momentum to the mare, and it brought 50% of the entire foal band into the market to where we are now, which we've just described. And you're absolutely right. There is a push amongst some. I would argue those who don't quite fully understand, and I don't say that about Kevin because he fully gets it, but some others who don't understand. And they think because Honeysuckle, as great as she was nearly the ruination of mares, because the assumption was, well, sure, if Honeysuckle got £7, that's not fair, so we need to push all the mares down. But outside of an elite 1, 2 or 3, the rest don't compete. I think Nick Luck said it this morning. I think Dubacilla was the only mare placed in a Gold Cup in the last 20 or 30 years. It's that far apart. I've never heard anyone watch the 1,000 Guineas and say, she was good, but I'm not sure she'd have beaten the 2,000 Guineas winner. We need to separate them and accept that this is the best of the mares in the novice category, in the hurdle category, in the chase category, and identify what they are and keep the dream for them alive all the way. So I think as breeders, when you hear pushback everywhere, I think it's so important that our boots on the ground are fighting for exactly what Peter says, because if you remove that dream from the mare, we don't need to guess where we'll be. We'll be in 2007, 8 and 9, and most of you sat on a bale there, and it was a lonely experience. So the retention of those grade 1s to me it's far more important than anything we've talked about here tonight.
And as you will note, because obviously we've done it in France for long to raise the fillies, and there is restricted fillies. There's no Group 1 though. They're restricted group races for fillies, but obviously you get the best of fillies. You'll see more and more fillies competing, as in France we often have. Every year you got a top filly able to beat the boys. Yep. So what you're saying is dead right, is you will head into the division where by doing so, and I refer to a great article from Jane Mangan, I don't know if she's here tonight, but hey Jane, called Eden in Plain Sight, talking about the way the pyramid should be done. About, I don't remember I've got them, but just the way it's shaped. So you should have less Group 1, obviously, than Group 3s. Well, in Ireland and England, somebody's built a pyramid. It wouldn't have been good in Egypt because they built like that. It's bloody ridiculous. So you've got 40 Group 1s in the UK, 37 in Ireland. This is back, So the whole thing makes no sense. So you're telling somebody he's got more chance to win a Group 1 than a Group 3. You say somebody in France, again, we go back to common sense. The guy's going to say, sorry? So then you give 60,000 for a Group 1. That's what we get for Group 3. I'm not saying we're right. I'm saying it's done in a way where scales, you're obviously building up. You make all these championship races, before the finale, you trials, and you will get the good fillies. In France, in the last 5-6 years, we've had 3 amazing fillies, well capable to beat the colts or to beat the boys. So you have to build that program, but you should be built this way, not the other way.
Yeah, in fairness, Bertie, the mayor's program is built that way. We've put the pyramid the right way around.
So it's good for the girls, but no good for the boys, right?
Yeah, no, the boys are a little bit like that. Yeah.
When I started in 2014 at ITM, there was no demand for now. As you say, fillies are topping the store sales because there is a proper race program, and you have the championship races. Like I remember when I first started, like Paul Nichols wouldn't train a filly. He didn't want any mare that was purely Gaelic, but now they just want proper because there's a proper race program both in Ireland and England. So it is important that you have the championship races then at the leading festivals for these fillies.
Just to give you a sense how far behind they were and the sort of stuff that ITM does, there was actually, we're talking about 10 years ago or thereabouts, there was actually a subsidy in place for Irish point-to-point mares to go to an English sale and not to be afraid to try because they were going over and they were thinking there was nothing there for them. But you could see the shoots of hope coming, if you like. So there's a subsidy to say, go on, roll the dice, and you can. And those little things that ITM and others can do can make all the difference. There's no subsidy needed now. There should be, it's quite the opposite. But that's only 10 years ago. So just don't forget where we're at, or where we come from, I suppose.
Great. I think it's time for some questions. So I think we've got some mics going around. So I guess if you have questions, put your hand up, I suppose, is the most sensible option, isn't it? I see them already. There we go. There's one over there.
Hello? Yeah. Can you hear me?
We can hear.
Okay. Yeah. There was a few points made. I just want to question. Bertie, I think I'm addressing you correctly. Am I? In the percentage you said in regards to 2-year-olds that were starting out and 3-year-olds in France, how many of those were raced by breeders? Do you know? Do you have an answer for that? And then my question for that, my reason for questioning that is that the incentive is there in France to race your horses, what you breed. Okay, that incentive is not here in Ireland. Or the incentive to race and breed now has been introduced into England, and it's been quite successful. Unfortunately, we've fallen way behind in that respect. And Walter, I think, made a good example in regards to saying about horses and starting off and the training costs and this and that. And I'm aware of that, training, having horses and fillies in training, and the cost of that, and trying to get a mare to win races. But that incentive it's not, unfortunately, Ireland they started off on a scale and they introduced the ITBA scheme, and it hasn't gone any further, okay? I know they open up handicap races for fillies and this and that, but the breeder needs to get a reward for either breeding a winner or getting an incentive to race a filly or a gelding, to get out there early enough, to go to race, as you say, to start your career earlier, and that's not happening. It's unfortunate, and I think Peter made a point there earlier on, saying that breeding from some mares, breeding from this lower scale of mares, shouldn't be done. I'd agree with him wholeheartedly in regards to that. But at the same time, you'll go to a sale and you'll have a French-bred animal at a sale by a sexy stallion with no pedigree. And he's an individual that will sell. So, what's right and what's wrong? Do you know what I mean? Where I'm coming from? So you have a fashionable stallion and you don't have a commercial mare, but you have an individual that can sell. So it's, where do you get rid of that mare?
Hi, Pat. Sorry. Pat, thanks for the question. I disagree with you, and the opportunity is not there for breeders to race mares. Well, as you mentioned, there's the ITBA bonus, fillies and mares bonus, which has grown this year, gone up to $7,500. We'd like to think we might be able to improve that in the next year or so. Well, you'll get more for your filly when you sell her.
But there's no incentive to breed that filly. Where do you come from?
Well, if she, you can race her, okay, so just say you can race her, so you have the bonus scheme. There's also, your question was, people can't afford to race them. There's also there was a wonderful scheme the ITBA set up a few years ago, a lease scheme, where people could register their fillies, and then they sort of facilitate as a middleman to get their mares leased, so they'll be trained. Obviously, Willie Mullins has a couple of wonderful syndicates there. Gordon has a couple of wonderful syndicates who lease fillies, and that they've had huge success. You get your mare bred. Again, that's something maybe we should look into reviving in the ITBA, that scheme. It fell a little bit by the wayside.
Then you have your ITBA races, okay, that are open for let's say if you had a GBB filly, if you're not a GBB bred horse, you're not eligible for that prize. If you're not a French bred horse in France and you win a race, you're not eligible for that prize. In Ireland, if you're an Irish, an English, French bred, whatever you are, if once you pay into that scheme, you are eligible for that prize. The Irish are just opening their doors to anyone.
I knew
racing
you were
it.
going to ask that question.
Well, no, and that's a question. That's not a question. That's a statement.
No. But can I ask you why? Can I tell you why that's the case? So obviously, money doesn't grow on trees, and it's been quite tight to fund this scheme. And that's why. So all those mares have to pay to become eligible for the scheme, and it's been thought up to now. Certainly, it's been discussed and it's been regularly reviewed, but it's thought that we have more money in the pot if we accept non-Irish breds into that scheme as well. That's why that's the case.
Okay, good enough.
I think there was one more question. There's plenty of questions.
Thank you. A few observations. I was very interested to hear what you all had to say, especially what Bertie said there about the diversity of stallions in France. And I do believe that a lot of breeders in Ireland are victims, as I would have made themselves victims, to fads and fashions of certain stallions being promoted. And if I had my way, or if I was in charge, I would like to limit stallions to 200 coverings in a year. Give the other guys a chance. And if you go to, we'll say, I just take him, might as well name him, walk in the park, and you pay a substantial fee, and you go to the sales with your store or whatever, you could be up against 30 or 40 of the same breed. And if your mare isn't a top class or a black type mare, what chance have you? So I think we want, as breeders, people have to start thinking outside the box. I think as Bertie said it, about you look at the stallion and see that your stallion suits your mare, or vice versa. Anthony, yeah. And you have to just think a little more of where you're going and trust your gut and follow your heart for one thing, but follow your head also. And so does like for instance, I would have had a Flemingford mare, and I would be a great fan of anything produced by Sadler's Wells. I think fabulous temperament, great race horses and whatever. And that to me is the perfect match made in heaven, or vice versa. Bertie, am I right in saying that generally speaking you break your horses as 2-year-olds in France as distinct from 3-year-olds?
If I tell you the real program of our horses, you won't believe me. So all our jumping stock broken in the summer of their yearling year. 1 month. Yeah. I give you the whole program. 1 month. Yeah. They're just back. We just go by season. We call Indian summer. September, October, November. They go outside when the weather turns foul again. We ride them again. So they go back ridden November, December, January, February. So sometimes we reduce depending how strong they are. We wait for Cheltenham, they turned out until the spring. It gets hot in France sometime. Yeah. We just bring them in. It's hot, so we bring them in. So that's second year. 2 months in the summer. Indian summer, they go out again. September, October, October, end of October, November, they're back in. And all our 2-year-old, I was this morning in Chantilly seeing a few before coming here. With the frost, we couldn't see much, but anyway, trying to. And they are all jumping poles, and they've been with the trainer already a month and a half. This is our 2-year-old.
3-year-olds.
Yeah, they just turned 3, sorry. Whether is a big, slow boat or a small little rabbit. The point I'm making is, I remember my father, great pal with Arthur Moore, and once he had this conversation in the car, which I can't forget. So Arthur was saying to Dad, I think he was a horse. Well, maybe it wasn't Arthur, but it was a conversation that they had together. He had a horse, he was just not showing much, and he said, I'm going to turn him out. And Dad was to say, so you're telling me your kid is useless at school, you're sending him on a holiday with pocket money, and hoping that on his return he would have improved. And that was a very striking memory of that, because obviously Dad was one of the first, just to export horses to the UK, and that really, resonated in my mind, because whether he's big or small, whether he's precocious or backward, that's the program. Now we're going to back off the 3-year-old that are showing you just, I've seen a couple of yours this morning as well. I've seen a couple, that just need a bit of time. We're going to back them off, give them the spring grass and take them over so they would have been broken. We do July, but because it's hot and rather do it when it's hot, that they instead of having the flies. But that's, to answer your question, the way we do it.
Just one thing with regard to 4-year-old points. I have believed for years that a lot of these 4-year-olds, they're not really 4-year-olds at all. They may be 4-year-olds 1st of January. They're 3 and a bit. And I'd love to know, so Richard is a great man for stats. Has anybody done the stats on 4-year-olds that have 1 point of points? And what have they gone on to do after that? The ones that have made 300-400 grand, are they flappers at the end of the day, or are they Gold Cup winners? I don't think there are too many Gold Cup winners in there. Anyway, hold on a second, I'm not quite finished.
Jesus Christ, there's more, I'm in trouble here.
I'm going to do a Willie John McBride and get my retaliation in first. And just one little thing that might sweeten it for us poor breeders down here, and it would be a novel idea. Why not give, say, even 1% of winnings to the breeder? In other words, if some person here had the great joy and the good luck of breeding a Grade 1 winner or a Gold Cup winner, and you say, I did that. But if I got 1% back, let it be 1 grand. 500 quid. Take your wife to dinner, go away for the weekend, whatever, but you'd have, and would keep her quiet for a while. And it wouldn't be getting it in your right ear for the next year. Get rid of those bloody horses. Anyway, I go back to the marketing. I think we're victims of it, and there's a lot of rubbish goes on as regards stallions and things in this country. There's one stallion in this country, standing up in County Kildare. He's about 21 now. He was a better racehorse in France ever than Walk in the Park. There are 3-year-olds coming on now, and 2 years ago, I think, he had 27 runners in France. He 2/3 of his horses that ran in France won, 67%. Not too many of them can say that now. In France. I have a 2-year-old by him. Thank you very much. And he's not for sale.
I'd just get Richard to...
Yeah, look, I mean, I've been trying to beat the drum of 4-year-olds for quite some time. So yeah, at one stage, 9 of the last 14 Cheltenham Gold Cup winners were Irish Pointer Pointers, so thankfully we're good there. You'd have the Corrick Rambler story thrown at you from time to time. He was 6, give them time. There was 20 Irish Pointer Pointers in this year's Aintree Grand National. 18 of them ran as 4-year-olds, 1 as 5, and Corrick Rambler was the exception, not the rule. But to answer your direct question with 4-year-old maiden winners, 97.8% of them go on to run on the track. 85% of them go on to win 85% of them go on to win prize money on the track, and 73% of them go on to win. The reason I know that is when you're challenged, I don't pretend to say they're great, they'll all win, or none of them will win. 73% of them from 2005 to today will win on the track. Not 74, 73. 85% will return prize money, and 98% will keep running. Now, if you take a challenge, if I said to Auntie Bromley, I want you to buy me 100 horses, and here's the thing, I want 98 of them to run, I want 85 of them to win, to be placed, and 75 of them to win. You'd say that's a fairly difficult challenge. And to be honest with you, as good as it is for us, it creates some of the polarization. Because in this game of chance, the Hewick, it could happen to anyone. We're actually starting to find out an awful lot more. The information is far more. The store guy is doing so much more with his stores that he kind of knows. See him every day, bring him into the ring. He comes back out looking for more. He eats up every night. He never pulls a muscle. He's hardy. So then he goes to the point-to-point man. He never misses a beat. He's known about before he ever wins his point-to-point. So the ones that are actually making 300,000 or 400,000 are disproportionately outperforming the lesser priced horses than ever they did before. So the success of point-to-pointing is actually creating the polarization, which is part of the challenge.
What have you got against 5-year-old point-to-point?
Nothing at all. Denman was an incredible result. It's just that the 4-year-olds perform better. That's all. I'm not been fed by a desire to do anything other than follow the data.
Could I ask Charles O'Neill a question? At a time of overproduction in the thoroughbred sector, and breeders having difficulty in getting their stock into sales, and the sales having a low clearance rate, does it really make sense in ITM spending mare owners' money on advertising stallions? Could the money not be better spent by informing owners what type of stock ITM can find buyers for, and assisting in breeders to produce the stock that the marketplace wants? It would be helpful if ITM could produce a chart for stallions with the first and second crop runners of that particular stallion with a reference to percentage of winners to mares covered. That would give breeders a better insight as to which stallion has a better chance of producing winners, and it might help breeders get back to making a profit.
Whoa. To bring out a chart on stallions, that's something that would be very, very difficult for us to do, because we have to look after the whole industry and try to promote the whole industry in Ireland. We don't promote a particular stallion or any stallions. The idea of the trail is to try and get everyone to look at every stallion and get a wider base of people looking at stallions, and get farms open to people that breeders might go to places they might never thought of. So that's one of the reasons why that concept came on, and that was, it started in France, and like I remember that Joe Foley says they're doing it, and that's where it's got, and it's got bigger and bigger. But that's to try and hopefully get breeders to go see more stallions, look at more stallions. Can we bring out a chart? I think it's something that'd be very, very difficult for us. Stallion farms, I'd say I'd be shot in the morning, you know, if we brought it out, because every stallion has a stat to prove it's a champion somewhere or a champion at something. But there are things we can try and look at to see, can we help, you know, the breeders and that. And as I said, the biggest problem we had this year was so many by the same sire, like in sales. You know, when you have 70, 80 foals by certain sires, it is a problem. Like we in the team, like we talk every day, like we hope, you know, the Urban Sea that are, you know, all the Sea the Star stallions, like we're hoping every day these work, because there's so many of them being, like the big numbers being covered by Sons of Sea the Stars, that really they have to work, because if not, it could set us back 6-7 years in our breeding program to get us back up on track. And it is a big thing, but fingers crossed and everything else. Like we do think about this type of stuff every day, you know, of what can we do to help the breeder? How can we, you know, do things? I think what the guy said here on the 2-year-old side, you know, how do we make it easier or cheaper for breeders that if they want to race as 2-year-olds, or if there's a 2-year-old program there? I thought Walter's point was very good. And, you know, if you started a 3-year-old, even if you started that for fillies, and you had a proper racing program for National Hunt fillies, that you know your filly, the racing quality of your filly earlier, it gives a breeder, you know, you have some idea before, you know, years earlier of how good your filly is or not, or mare that you want to keep, is a thing. But we're open to try and help any way of promoting the stallion. I'd love to say I could bring out a chart, but that's something I don't think I can do. And the big problem, and for us, the National Hunt foal is the hardest market for us, because there is one market. Like, you know, on the flat side, as someone said to me, you know, you have 34 countries buy flat foals. There's only 34 people buy, you know, National Hunt foals. So it is a huge. So the problem is then, how do you get your foal to be the best, to stand out in that category, that where it is, to give it the best chance of selling? We're trying to do more. The UK hasn't helped us, and like we lost buyers from the UK this year. I think Brexit has been a major problem for us, with that UK national hunt, market on the foal side. Not only Brexit, but the economy over there. Like this year, we fought hard, but there was a market decrease in English buyers in the English market. I think a lot of it's to do with the economy. We're hoping every day it bounces back, that we can get out. We're starting a program of trying to promote the national hunt bred now in the UK. On Friday, I'm heading to the UK for a while. So we're doing everything we can to try and promote and try get, especially back in, to get those UK foal buyers back that were missing this year, because they were badly needed.
I'd like to start by complimenting the ITBA for running such a good seminar tonight and putting on a fantastic panel. Well done. Just a few points, I suppose. I don't know who to address it to, but what is the actual obstacle here to having more 3-year-old races? Like, is it HRI? Is it whose policy? Who's? I just have a few points. So can I go through them first? But who says yes or no to that? Because it seems to be from like what you're saying that probably is the way to go. The second point on that then is, like, as breeders, as small breeders, should we be more looking at rather not selling the foal and keeping them then, if this program does work with 3-year races, to keep to the 2-year-old? Would you see that as a benefit rather than trying to, there is a decline in people buying foals. So should breeders be looking at, right, we'll breed the foal, keep them till they're 2, assuming that the Derby sale will accept 2, I'm talking long term, that will go down that road. I would agree with the gentleman over my left here about ITM. Like, I suppose to me, Irish thoroughbred marketing, the way I feel about it as a small breeder is that the stallion men have enough of money to promote their own stallion, that maybe it's more the foal and market the foal. And on that point, Charles, could you just explain the process to us about how you said you promote people to buy Irish, but can you explain the process of what it is that you actually do to get people to buy the Irish? As a breeder, I don't know exactly how you operate. Thank you.
All right. Well, the first point on the race program, like, I've spoken to the team in HRI in the race, and they will build a race program if the population of horse there. So to start with that 3-year-old program, it is, it's a collective approach from the horse population. So from the sales companies, the consigners, to race planning. But HRI, I know, are open to putting on a proper program if the horse population is there to do it. They did make 3-year-old races. They used to start after Galway. They now start in July for 3-year-old races. Now, they're primarily filled now by horses that have come off the flat. But there is a program. They are open. Like, one of the suggestions I heard recently was the first 4-year-old bumper was in Naas last week. But if you move that back to Leopardstown and has a champion 3-year-old bumper, for national hunt, for horses like that, it could make a start to the thing to build something like that. So HRI, I know, are open and to building a program for that. What ITM do, to that I can start with a lot. Our main role is what we were set up to do, is to promote the Irish bred horse around the world. So it was really everywhere outside of Ireland is our remit, is to promote across the world. So the hardest job for us is the foal, the national hunt foal, because it's predominantly an Irish market. But what we have tried to do more and more is, to get into the UK market, work with guys like people like Matt Coleman, who used to buy stores, but his owners now will buy more foals because they can't compete with the point-to-point guys. So they'd rather go in and buy more foals to keep and train. So trying to find those guys to come in and promote the foal. We do everything we can to try and promote the success of the Irish bred everywhere we can, and that's true. The Racing Post, Racing TV, through everything we do on social media and everything that way, to keep trying to hammer the drum on the success of the Irish bred. I have a team of 6 or 7 of us. There's 3 of us really travel across the UK up and down, constantly promoting the Irish bred, trying to get people in. Yes, like a big issue, or a big problem for us is, the numbers of French breds that have got into our store sales, and it's gone from 10%, but that's nothing. ITM have zero control over what goes into a store sale. But our job is to try and get as many people to the sales as we possibly can that want to buy. We collect data from every sale, who's buying, who's new, to make sure they're targeted to get them in. We give an inward buyer payment for UK buyers to come, and that's €200 towards their flight costs. That's done. we did get and the hardest time for me every year is the July store sale. That's when I get hit hardest, really, because people tell me they can't get their store into they've lost out on the Derby sale or the Land Rover sale or the Arkle sale, sorry, because of the French bread. We have zero control over that. But what we try to do is make sure we don't promote the French bread if it tops a sale or anything like that, or if there's a French bread bought a sale, we don't do anything to do with that. But we try keep hammering home the Irish bread as best we can. And it is tough. And at the moment it is, because the French bread is, as I said, we tried to hire one of our racing papers to write a story, and we wanted it purely on the success, and it was to come towards the Irish foal, of the success of Irish foals that have gone on. And it couldn't be done. They wanted to do it with a French angle, and we pulled it because we wanted to try and make it that successful foal pin hooks that went on in the last few years and that. And they said it was too addy-like. Well, if we're paying for it, that's what we want. And that. So we are doing it. We're open to trying everything we possibly can. I think if we can narrow the gap, but because to pin hook a foal or to rear a foal, you need a farm. To do it on the flat, it's a lot simpler. It's a 10-month wait. You can come together. So from our point of view of marketing, if we could narrow the gap, I know, it gives us a bigger market of people to try and go after, to get involved in this game. And then it is polarized, as I say, but that's because the band of people buying is probably not as wide as it should be. If we had more people, it wouldn't be as polarized of always looking for the same type of stallions. So the easier we can for people to make a return on the game, the more we can try and push the game and push that side of it to get people in. But I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. It is the toughest one for us because our market is primarily international, but to try and keep promoting the Irish bred foal, because we're trying to promote it to the Walter Connors or the guys here that are pinhooking the foals, and not to go to France. That's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to do and these guys as well, that they're so educated. But that's the market. And it's, as I said, the biggest, 2014, High Flyer, you were one of the biggest foal buyers. So you were at that sale.
Would that be for Trevor Hemmings?
Was that for Trevor?
I'd say.
Yeah, but now they didn't buy any, they haven't bought any in a few years. And you see, Walter, so it's to try and get these boys, maybe we have to try and do a bit more in educating these boys that you don't need to be going to France. But that's where we need the diversification.
Sharon, has ITM got anybody of the caliber of Marco Hanlon? He could go anywhere around the world.
I believe I have a very, 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 very good team.
Yeah, he could actually go anywhere without the computer laptop. He could push the flesh and sell the horses. How he actually got somebody of that caliber? Because I think that's going to be where a little slack is going.
You don't answer that. I'm surprised that there's sort of questions coming at ITM as if they're not doing a good job. I'm an overseas buyer, and it's the envy of the world what you've got in ITM. I'm telling you now, it's a joke what we've got in Britain. The FRBC is not much.
And we've copied ITM.
And it's not, it's ITM is a good thing. And I'm just saying and I'm a biggish buyer, and they facilitate and work with my English clients and my trainers, the team. My God, there's no stone left unturned to make sure they've got transport from airports, transfers. They're out and about in their own countries, trying to get us to come to sales in Ireland. Their team's good. Don't be too hard on them.
One thing I will say, Marco Hanlon was one of the most special guys, and it brings it up my throat because he was, he died soon after. He had a heart attack in the office. I'll never forget the day as long as I live, Mark, when it happened. And he was a very, very special guy. Now, Mark's forte was on the flat. It wasn't on the national hunt. So Mark specialised in the Middle East for us. I think I have a much stronger team. So I do now, in the way we try run the national hunt game in the UK, in working with the agents from the sales companies and that, who are very strong national hunt fields as well. So we don't ever use, and the team, none of the team were afraid to go and meet people and put their hand up, and get stuck in and meet new people. And we use every contact we have to introduce us. I'm hoping to go to the UK, please God, racing Friday and Saturday. But this gentleman has agreed, says, come over, stay with me, and I'll introduce you to as many more new people as I can. And that's the way we try to do, is use our contacts to meet as many people as we can. But I wouldn't change one member of my team for anyone at the moment.
Hiya, I just wanted to make a couple of points, I suppose. Walter, you mentioned a while ago the cost of production, which I suppose has got massive in the last couple of years. If you go back 7 or 8 years, the cost of presenting, the cost of Fleming's-Firth, so you're still talking top sires, but capped at 12, max 15 grand. You're now talking national hunt stallions going beyond that. So going to the sales with the foal is very difficult as a starting point. Secondly, from that, then I suppose just the other question was, in December sales, Goffs started at their alphabetical letter and went straight through the catalogue. I know Tats do it day by day, categorised. Is there a benefit, I suppose, obviously for purchasers coming over? Yeah, you get the best foals in one day. But for a breeding point of view, is there a benefit to running straight through the catalogue?
I think the last time we had downturns, wherever there was maybe 1 or 2 national hunt mares, the other farming enterprises were making enough money to be able to support them. So I'd say that it's probably going to be short-lived, the cost of production, because people won't be able to afford the losses. So then they'll be gone. And whether the horse is gone, whether the mare will be gone, if the owner is gone. So, you know, I'm sure that over the next couple of years it's going to sort itself out, because the on-farm production costs, as well as it's not just the nomination. For us, it's the cost from there on of labour, land, how to farm it, cost of feed, and our outfit is not great to pay the vet. So there's not a lot. You know, the cost of production is across the board, and you know, good horses are dear, but good horses have to be dear. And I'd say that in this downturn, the other farming enterprises won't subsidise it to allow a lot of it to survive, I'd say. So I could see a lot of mares being gone over the course of the next 2 or 3 years, unless there's some way of embracing that. You know, I don't think a subsidy is an answer to anything, because anything I ever got for nothing, I thought nothing of it. But there's definitely choppy waters over the course of a few years, and it wouldn't maybe serve at all well if ruthless economics were the reason for the culling. You know, we're lucky enough to have 2 reasonable mares at the moment, and both of them are unraced. You know, so it's not that exact. And a lot of people that had a couple of broodmares for the love of them, you know, it's a pity if they go, if they're forced out by the economics of it.
What about alphabetical for the sales, for foal sales?
Yeah, I think the question was, is there an advantage in going A to Z across the whole set? There's advantages in both ways, to be honest. We look at the advantages of Goffs, and I presume they look at the advantages of us. The advantage Goffs have, I suppose, is the equitable across the 4 days. The advantage we have is if you have 2 or 3 foals, we can give you a day. From labour has become something more difficult, and we can say, well, it mightn't be always the day you want, but you can come up on Sunday or Monday and you can get your business done and be gone. I'm not going to try and sell one over the other tonight, doesn't need to get into that, but there are advantages of both. Both are A to Z, but one is done by day and one is done across the sale. We do have a logistical challenge as well. We don't have as many stables as foals, so it means that for the moment, until there's a bit more capex put into it, we can't do that. We need to be very clear. When you're trying to identify the problem, you need to be very clear exactly what the problem is. So I've no doubt the Goffs figures will map across to what I describe here, but I obviously know the Tattersalls one's better. If you look at the last 22 years, which covers a Celtic Tiger, a crash, a lift again, and then the whole Brexit pandemic thing, this year's November sale, and as I say, I'm sure Goffs will give you the same figure, so I think it's just indicative of the industry, but I'm applying it to the November sale. There were more 50,000 plus foals, more 80,000 plus foals than ever before. It was the 4th highest average in the last 22 years, and then the news gets less good. It was the 6th highest median in 22. That's acceptable, but it's not wonderful. It was the 9th highest aggregate. We had less foals, but the stats are falling down a bit, and it was the 15th highest clearance. So there is good news in there, but the clearance is the problem. Going back to Peter's point about you've got to hit the mark, but if you hit the mark, we've record returns at the top level. I didn't check off, so I'm sure it's very, very similar. So we need to narrow our identify exactly what the problem is, because sometimes you can spread it wide and say it's all a problem. There's a narrow problem, it is clearance at a certain end, and that's the challenge. And I honestly don't think it's for ITM to fix that. I think it's unfixable in that regard by a marketing. I go back to looking at the overall business. There's a product and there's a marketing team, and the marketing team can only push the product in keeping with the demand that's out there.
Well, the seminar tonight is called Jumping into the Future, and I suppose as a young person I'd be, hoping to have a future in this sport, But the way I see it is, for the normal breeder, trying to breed the chaser, the traditional chaser, it just takes too long. And I'd be looking at France, say, for example, this year you had a horse, Jigme. Bertie might know about him there. He was unbeaten bar once over hurdles, and now as a 4-year-old he's in the stallion book. His 4-year-old counterparts, they're getting ready for their points here in Ireland, and I just want to know, long term, could the culture change towards racing more colts in Ireland?
What's your name, sorry?
Michael.
Michael, I'm going to answer that question because we race a lot of colts ourselves and for clients. We had Beaumec de Well, we're near Vanna du Berlay. And racing colt is not a problem, but there's a high level of wastage. When I mean wastage, when you keep testicle on a horse, which is something you do very little here, it can often go very sour, and you add weight. And we all know weight is the enemy of the racehorse. So he can do it, and Jigme is a perfect example because he beat us all year. We've been second to him, and he's a narrow horse. He's a blade, so that worked for him. But if you got the heavy type, it's difficult. And looking at the Irish breed as a whole, you mentioned it earlier, and that's my eye, but I don't want to be judged only for that. But when I go to the store sales, I find them fat as well, because it's just an eye perspective. So the perception needs to change. But to give you one example that I think almost should answer all your questions, the best breed in France is Haras du Berlay. These guys are in the middle of nowhere, in the center of France, not particularly good land. They got 15 mares. They produce almost a Group 1 every year, almost 15 mares. The only selection Jean-Marc Lucas made all of his life is they had to have run and won in the spring of the 3rd year. They didn't have to be campaign. They could have won the good races after. That was his only basic selection. I think that answers your question. Now, if people don't want to listen to it, well, you'll do something else.
Okay, thanks.
But when you race all those 3 years old and they go to stud at 4, are you not destroying the racing program as well?
No, because the second will win. And you keep on, the thing is, you know how many go every year in the Rush, which is one of our first juvenile top 3-year race. Before it used to be 1, now this year was a joke. There was 4, wasn't it?
Well, the first 5.
The first 5 at colts. So, but again, it's a matter of selection. To be able, with testicle, to do that performance in the spring of your 3rd year, it takes a hell of a horse. So genetically, you've already narrow picked, you've gullied, you've put yourself in a situation where if this horse can do that at this stage of his life, where some 3-year-old on the flat haven't made a debut in these big yards, haven't made a debut yet, or thinking of making a debut, that shows that you've got precocity, quality, jumping ability. So I agree with you, maybe too many of them, but I think people are learning the trade. Maybe there was too many this year, maybe.
It wasn't very interesting from a commercial point of view. I couldn't go and buy them, really, because they're all trying to make their own stallions. It is interesting how it has changed, that everyone's keeping them as colts if they're quite well bred now in France. They're all trying to get that big golden ticket of getting a stallion. And it'll be interesting how it all plays out. They had the National Hunt yearling sales the big sale in France is November for the jumpers. And normally the Irish can buy a lot of young stock there to bring back to the sales as 3-year-olds. And there was a lot of investment now, and more so, I noticed more this year than ever, but it's been the last couple of years been building. A lot of investment now from French guys buying a colt, hoping for this dream of creating their own stallion, because they could make, the big golden ticket is, Jigme won 5 out of his 6. He won 350,000 euros. He won the Grade 1 easily at the beginning of November. They sold 40% of him to a stallion stud during the summer for, I believe it was €1 million for 40%. Valued the horse, was that right?
2.5 million.
Yeah, it valued the horse at €2.4 million. There's the dream. So suddenly there's quite a lot of investment coming in trying to buy colts. If you had a gelding yearling at the Arcana sales, you were actually, that was a negative. Because if you had your what do you call it, testicular? If you had that.
How do you say in English?
Well, bulls.
Bulls. Very rude.
Yes.
Very rude.
That was the thing. So the guys who own Jigme, they actually broke the record for a National Hunt yearling in November, 255 or 65,000 euros for a Dr. Dino colt. Wow, it was eye-opening stuff that these stallions have been successful. Like Nirvana and Goliath, they raced into their 4-year year, and they were heavily raced. They weren't kept in cotton wool. Quite a lot of these horses raced a lot. Metayer, ran Cap Guard and Saint Descents lots. Yeah. Metayer loves getting the prize money. He'll keep running them. But the end of the 4-year-old year, there's nothing really after that. That's when you're disadvantaged by being a 5-year-old if you've won all the races as a 4-year-old in France. So you almost got to have a year off nearly to come back and be a 6-year-old. So as a colt anyway, you're ready to go and do your job. You've proven yourself. It is fascinating. There's so totally different ways. Where you so many stallions here, England and Ireland, that haven't even really raced and proven themselves on soft ground. So when I was talking about earlier, you've got the gene pool at the top, and the stallion side and the mare side. Half of your progeny, we don't even know if they're going soft ground. Because you're using a Royal Ascot winner that's won his best performance was on fast ground. We don't even know if they got the action for proper soft ground. It's just those little things. You just think, wow, we don't really think it through sometimes. You just go, oh yeah, but that was a Group 1 winner at Royal Ascot. Yeah, but he couldn't run in soft. Yeah, let's send 300 mares to him. Get on.
I've got a question for Peter. Peter, you mentioned earlier that race fillies when they finish their careers and they've got their black type, that there's very few people wanting to try to buy them. But we've got a room full of breeders. Surely, with plenty of funds behind them. You bought 2 mares in Goffs there recently. I think you bought Say Goodbye for 90 and Magic Days for 80. Tremendous value. You bought Cap Soleil a year ago in Fold of Crystal Ocean for 75 grand maybe. And you probably got most of the investment back in one foal. I remember Will Kinsey bought Limini, I think he's in the room, for 75 grand. He got most of his investment back in one foal. We sold a mare a few years ago called Burn and Turn, 45 grand. Actually, she was vendored, I think in 2016. The first foal out of her made 50. So why do you think breeders are not, these mares are on the market, these black type mares, proven sound, wind and limb. Why do you think breeders aren't buying them?
Well, that's why I said what I said earlier. I was there. It was a sort of call to arms, guys. Get your fingers out. And I'm not even talking about spending 60, 70, 80 grand. You can buy a nice bumper winner, a nice hurdle winner, half to a black type horse in foal for 20 grand, 30 grand tops. They're not dear to buy. Those mares are not dear to buy. There's great value, and there's more and more of them coming on the market because there's more and more mares racing now. And I think they're going to get better value, and I think people need to wake up and buy them instead of breeding from your own unraced mare. Walter said he's got 2 mares at home, and one of them is a damn of a Grade 1 winner, and they're both unraced. but we're dealing with horses, so horses make liars out of you every day. But I genuinely think, like Bert is just saying there, those stallions, they've proved that they can jump, they can prove that they can gallop. As Anthony says, they prove they can go through soft ground. I think we should do the same with the mares. I think the mares need to be proven as well, that they're sound and athletic and able to gallop.
And maybe go to stud earlier, because it'd be worth more money.
That's the other thing is that if you started your mare, I've just noticed we bought a couple of nice mares in France last year. Bertie very kindly found a very nice mare for us. She was a 5-year-old.
She's a 5-year-old listed winner.
She was a 5-year-old listed winner in Foals and No Risk at All.
You paid no money for
her? She was a bit dear now. But, the most of the mares you're buying here are 8 and 9. So, if we could start our program earlier, then they'd be retiring earlier. You have more time to breed from them, extra years to breed from.
We're looking to buy every year mares from Ireland, because obviously you offer them, mostly the Mullins Yard, you offered a lot of fillies. We bought Let's Fly from you because she was the only 6-year-old mare turning 7. I can't personally just advise our friends or investors, whatever, to get into a mare when she's 10, 11. So that means I'm going to get my first foal when she's 11. And I think we haven't mentioned that in the whole, again, in the pros of the age group of just starting the whole bloody thing earlier, is because you, again, losing value. You can't, we can't advise somebody to go and buy a mare with 12. Makes no sense. In my opinion, or buy her at a reduced price. You can buy her, but at a reduced rate, because you're going to get 5 foals out of her. The reality, when she's 17, 18, she gets MLItis, a crack in the hoof, you get 2 years out, you've had 5 foals, 4 foals for spending big money on a mare. I think it's tricky. If you buy a younger mare, Let's Fly was the only one because she was turning 7. So, again, it's another pros of starting earlier, if we needed to insist again.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just can't stress enough that there's more and more of these mares coming on the market. And even, if you say, 20 grand is too much for me, 30 grand, a couple of you get together and buy a nice mare. To me, that's a much better investment.
You're probably right. A cheap mare will always produce a cheap foal. That's sort of, unless you get lucky.
What about the prospect of syndicates getting together to buy mares, and then you go on with the racehorses, and then you reduce the cost, and it's an idea.
Well, it's a nice idea, but it's just not
It's
very
expensive.
sexy, is it?
Well, I know, but it might not be now the way you package it, but if you think about it, if somebody thinks about it and chooses to package it, and if things happen quicker, and you have enough people in, your costs are small.
Well, I mean, Harry's example of those, buying a mare, first foal, gets you out of trouble. I mean, but it's scary. God, I'm not going to go and spend 40,000 on a mare. I'd rather spend 10. That's how I sort of keep it tight. We're in tough times. Keep money tight. But what I think Pete's really saying is, this is the moment to consolidate, but actually consolidate by upgrade.
Upgrade your quality.
Upgrade your quality at the moment. There are chances out there at the moment to get some quite nice stock, I suspect. Because who's going to go and buy a broodmare next week at Donny? No one. I just mustn't buy one myself. I can't buy another one.
Just a few points, if I may. From what Anthony said there, are we standing the wrong type of stallion in Ireland altogether? I suppose we've proven ourselves that all these horses coming off the flat, off of a certain conveyor belt, haven't done the business. So should we be looking at a different type of stallion to stand? More of a staying type stallion, as you say, going on soft ground, and try and change the thing around that way. Also, there was a question asked about the polarization there. How do you overcome that with stallions? Would anybody on the panel go along with the idea of limiting stallions to 200 mares? Or is that something that shouldn't be done, that it will sort itself out itself? What does the panel think about that? And just as the 3-year-old races, I think because we're selling as 3-year-olds, as you've all said, you can't have 3-year-old races, really. But I do agree with Walter that we should try and everybody who said we should try and have them for mares, try and have a 3-year-old program for mares. That's something that could be introduced that might help the whole thing. But again, you know, why aren't breeders buying these good mares? Another point, they don't have the money to buy them. Breeders are not making a lot of money at the moment. There may be 3 or 4 top breeders in the country who can afford these mares, but maybe, as you said, we should pool together and try and get them and keep them in the country, but that's just the bare facts. But basically the question to you is, how do we stop the polarization? Are the stallions covering too many mares? Can we limit them? And are we standing the wrong type of stallion? Thank you.
Michael, well, as you're a very well known man, and you've studied some wonderful stallions over the years, and Old Vic and Diane, and you know, as I said at the start of the evening, you know, we can do too much hand wringing. We're producing a lot of good horses. We've got some wonderful stallions in the country. So, you know, I'm not going to say we're doing everything wrong. We have to do exactly what the French are doing and start standing a load of hurdlers. So we are doing some great things. As far as why are the breeders not buying the top class mares, I'm not talking about your general breeder buying these top mares at 60 and 70 and 100 and 150 grand or whatever they are, however much they are. They're still, as I said earlier, you know, wonderful value buying a nice bumper winner, again, half sister to a black type horse. You know, it's there. That value is there. It's proven. I bought a couple of them myself last year. You know, they're there to be bought, 20, 30 grand. As far as trying to limit the stallions, I'm a great believer in free market. I'm a great believer that we're all grown-ups. If you're a mare, as a breeder, if you don't want to send your mare to a stallion that's getting 200 mares or 300 mares, don't send your mare to that stallion. If your mare is not good enough to go to the stallion that's going to cost 15 or 20 grand, don't send your mare to that stallion. You know, we're all grown-ups. We have to make, you know, and you know yourself, you're an experienced man and you've been highly successful over the years. You know, that's the way to be. You know, sometimes we have to blame ourselves and not blame the game, as Roger O'Callaghan said.
Sorry.
That is the perception of a lot of male owners. If you brought in the jumping soya that is in France, and we all need to go that way, and hope then that the man with the mare will come in and use them. But if he's after jumping too much, they have no interest in using them in Ireland. And until that changes, we're always going to be lagging behind the French. That's my opinion of it anyhow. But like, when you say something too loud, people don't want to listen. Thanks for that.
I would just like to agree with Michael. I think that maybe it would be no harm to limit the stallions. I think that there are too many stallions getting too big a book of mares and then they're gone in a couple of years. And it's kind of a cycle that's after leading us to where we are now. The other thing I'd like to say is that both Goffs and Tattersalls are a small bit to blame for the specific sires. When you have a foal, and when a buyer buys a foal by a country sire, and when he goes to get him back into a Land Rover sale or a Derby sale, the people coming out to look at them and say to you, well, look, he's just not on the list. So it's nice for Anthony Bromley to say, hey, look at him, but if you can't get him into the sale, it's not great. The 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, I don't know, I think if you have a Ferrari, if you get into it in the morning or you get into it in the evening, it's still a Ferrari. So I think we're running ahead of ourselves maybe a bit with that. The Irish Thoroughbred marketing can only deal with what the cards that they are played, and I think there should be more diversity in our breed. I'd just like to hear Goffs and Tattersalls, why are you picking specific sires?
I'm not been sort of abrupt in any way. We're not. We don't pick the sires. The sires pick themselves insofar as two things happen. There's results and there's a market. And I suppose all we can do, and I'm partially paraphrasing Joey Cullen in a seminar last week, like we have to put together a catalogue that will reward the purchasers, that will bring them back the following year. You take the catalogue that you believe in the most, that you think purchasers will come, they will have what they want, they will have success with that, and they'll come back the following year. I've never, and I'm doing Derby sale inspections tomorrow, I've never gone out with a list of yes or no. But there are sires that are performing less well in the ring, and you probably do need a slightly better model to get them into certain sales. But you're driven by the results in the race course, the results in the ring, to put the best sale together, to hopefully have the consistency of the sale going forward, that it will continue to reward year on year. I hope that answers the question.
Just wanted to make 2 points and ask one question. The first point is for Peter. You mentioned about the quality of the brood mare, and I suppose I think myself and from talking to trainers, we've moved on from 20 years ago where there was a big population of poor quality mares being bred from. I think we've moved on from that. I'm not sure, have you seen that or not in the actual catalogues and the sales that are there? And then the second point was that Bertie had a bit of a cut at the Irish jumps trainer, so 5 minutes down the road, I think we've the best jumps trainer in the world. And my question was, to each of the panel, if you had an opportunity to buy a store filly, one bred in Ireland, one in France, or one in Great Britain, and the three of them were all the same quality, same type of pedigree, or same quality pedigree, which one would you pick and why?
What was the first point again? I can't remember what was your first point, sorry?
Just the quality of brood mare overall that we're breeding from.
No, it's definitely improving all the time. It's definitely improving all the time. we do a good bit on the flat as well. And I know on the flat, we're very slow to buy out of unraced mares on the flat. And I think the more and more mares that are going to race and then coming back into the brood mare band, I think that'll start to happen a little bit in the jumping as well. I think people will be slow to buy from unraced mares because the opportunity is there now to buy them, you know. And as your last point before Bertie comes on, I don't give a damn where they're from, as long as they're nice, they're good value, and they're going to win me lots of races.
I'll do the same, but I can't really say I'll buy them from anywhere because we've exposed tonight that the system works less than another one. So statistically, I'd be shooting myself in the foot if I was going to say I'm going to pick her in Ireland. Because statistically, facts and figures are proving us that it's not working as well as it should. As a matter of fact, I came to the Derby sale this year with only one filly in mind. Sadly, I didn't bring her home, but she was French. She was a Dr. Dino half to green tin, and I believe Harold Kirk bought it against me for 150. To go to Willie Mullins. So to answer your question, she was a French filly. She was pin-hooked by Seamus Murphy, I think, and a few partners, and ended up liking her at the sale. So I went to Ireland to buy that filly because I thought she was a lovely filly, and she'll be trained in this country. So I can't really say. we did buy a sister to Denman, we did buy a sister to Kalashnikov, trying in these families. But we do them the French way and see what happens. It's too early for me to tell you if it's working or not, but for so far so good. They're 3-year-old and they're good-looking fillies.
Thank you. I think you should ask that question, is it?
You're in trouble.
The choice of a French, British, or Irish store. I mean, I said early on that they can all be so mixed up now. I don't know if they're which ones they are. Some have got wherever they were dropped as a foal, they've suddenly got IRE next to their name. But reading Tommy wrong, who's done as well, Walter. But apparently he's an IRE. But he was by authorised, and it was only by luck that she foaled early and landed it in Ireland, because she was off back to France to get covered again. So reading Tommy wrong could be French bred, but is he? At the end of the day, he was reared in Ireland, and it's a French female pedigree. I mean, I don't know. Who's to say if they're French, Irish, English? I think you've got to just be open-minded. I tend to be pretty open-minded, I think, when I'm buying the horses. I just got to like the horse. A French pedigree might bring it a little bit to hand a bit earlier, possibly.
Okay, I'm just going to come back to the ITBA. The room is full of breeders. There's a couple of questions that a lot of people would want to know, and the panel is fantastic, by the way. Congratulations on assembling a really strong panel, and congratulations on the Mayor scheme. We all know it works. We've seen it develop, and the fact that it's gone from 5,000 to 7.5 grand has to be commended. I do, though, and I'm going to ask Charles this question. Was there an opportunity missed when we elevated it from 5 to 7.5, where that 2.5 could have gone to the breeders, just because they essentially fund it through the foal levy? This would be somewhat replicating the French premium system, and if we are going to have any semblance of a chance with a French premium or a breeder's premium, could that be an idea for us in the future? Is that an area we could explore?
Unfortunately, that premium was nothing to do with. I read it the first time I heard about it was when it was announced. So I can't answer the question on did we miss a trick or that. Like, one of the areas you'd love, and we went down the route. Like, Ireland went down the route of trying to put all its money into prize money and build the prize money and build the quality of racing to try and get more horse and training and attract Anthony's clients like that to Ireland and build that, and not go, the premium or the breeder's premium route, and that was a decision that was made many years ago to try and build a race program, build the quality, and put more money into that. Has it worked, or is it working? You'd have to say it is in terms of the quality the owners is, but we'll always try to look at opportunities, and we don't know. Like, there are schemes, but there's only so much money in the pot. But as Jane, as you already said, like, how do we find a scheme that we can even start rewarding Grade 1 winning breeders with some sort of, even if it's, as you say, for a dinner for a night out? And I don't know where that starts, but if you started, where do you stop it? So it's a very, very difficult one when the pot is so tight, and HRI and racing made the decision, try put as much into racing to build a racing program and build the quality of racing in Ireland, that then hopefully the breeder gets rewarded through the sales ring. That if you win a race in Ireland, you have a damn good horse, and you have a damn good, because it's so competitive. That was the route that was taken, that the breeder hopefully got rewarded by producing a horse that won here.
This is an ITBA scheme, so all the decisions have been made by the ITBA National Committee. It's been discussed ad nauseum about whether the breeders should get premiums and get rewarded. But as Charles said, that the pot has been tight. Currently trying to, for want of a better word, sex the whole thing up a little bit more even, and maybe nothing's ever off the table, and it would be wonderful if we could do that. Yeah.
I think we're all talked out. Thank you very much to everyone for your questions, but more importantly, thank you to all the panel here, a lot who have travelled from afar to be here as well. But I think